Chapter 1619. Surrounding the evil spirit, Jian Chen pursued closely. Although the primordial god Silk could not keep the evil spirit trapped, he controlled it to turn into two nets and move along with the evil spirit. The nets would go wherever the evil spirit went, sticking to the evil spirit like leeches. They suppressed the evil spirit's power to devour, so it was unable to use its abilities to their full capability. Jian Chen controlled the twin swords to constantly attack the evil spirit as well. They shone with a dazzling light as they pierced through the evil spirit with devastating might. The evil spirit would become much weaker with each attack. Sustenance, you cannot kill me. I am indestructible. You are all just making a pointless struggle, the evil spirit roared out, but it did not fight Jian Chen. However, it fled as fast as it could, and its speed exploded all of a sudden. With a flash, it crossed several thousand kilometers as if it had teleported. Space seemed to fold up before it as it fled. Whenever it passed through a fold, it seemed to teleport by several thousand kilometers. To no surprise, it fled in the direction where the presence of life was the heaviest. Sustenance, I want to devour large quantities of food. As long as I recover some strength, I won't need to fear him anymore. I'll even devour him, thought the evil spirit. As it fled, it just happened to pass by a city. The city seemed to have reached first class in size, possessing a population of several million. The people who lived here were relatively weak, with the strongest only being Earth Saint Masters. The evil spirit continued to flee, but it slowed down slightly. As it flew past the city as a red mist, it immediately produced a terrifying suction, quickly draining away the several million lives into the sky like a long river. The evil spirit had absorbed all their lives. The city was not particularly large, only with an area of several tens of thousand kilometers squared. As a result, the evil spirit's devouring powers did not weaken at all and instead strengthened even though it was currently suppressed due to the size. It sucked away all the lives and vital energies from several million people, reducing the bustling place to a ghost city. However, devouring the entire city's population took less than a single second. The evil spirit did not stop for any longer and continued towards the next city. 2 more seconds passed after the evil spirit had left and a resplendent streak of violet light shot through the sky. It crossed the city like a bolt of lightning, disappearing into the horizon instantly. It directly pursued the evil spirit. Jian Chen's face was terrifyingly sunken within the violet light. His soul was now powerful enough to envelop the entire planet. Obviously, he saw exactly what had happened to the city earlier, so it made his killing intent surge. Several million people had met their end by having their lives drained away in a single moment. Moreover, all of this was due to the evil spirit ahead. Unfortunately, the evil spirit was determined to flee, using all its abilities to cross through space as quickly as possible. Space seemed to fold up before it, so it moved extremely fast. Jian Chen would not be able to catch up instantly. Very soon, the two of them passed over a dozen cities. Without any exceptions, the evil spirit's arrival at each city would lead to a devastating disaster. The lives of all the people would be drained instantly, and the evil spirit's strength slowly began to recover after devouring so many lives. Its presence was gradually strengthening. Jian Chen was stern, and he said grimly from behind, "We can't let this evil power devour anything more. We have to use everything we have to stop it. Everyone, stand in scattered formations in front of the evil power. If the evil power approaches you, keep it busy with all you have. As long as you can keep it busy for a single moment, I'll be able to arrive and assist you." Jian Chen's voice rang out in the ears of all the Origin Realm experts from both worlds. Immediately, all of them stood in many formations, forming a huge blockade in the path that the evil spirit would pass through using space gates before the space was disturbed. They tried to keep the evil spirit busy for some time. All of them were extremely grim because they knew that their powers would weaken since they were scattered. They might be reduced to food without even lasting for a single second against the evil spirit. However, they had no alternative now. Although there was a portion of them that would be devoured before Jian Chen could even make it in time, at least there was a chance for them to keep the evil spirit slightly busy. They would die anyway if the evil spirit recovered a certain amount of power. The evil spirit continued in the same direction when it sensed their actions. It produced a strange laughter and directly charged towards the region with the fewest people. The weakest among them were sainthood experts, so their life force was many times greater than ordinary people. The evil spirit would be able to recover quite a lot if it devoured them. Oh no, it's heading towards us. Everyone be alert. We must use our full power, or we won't even be able to last a second, a Saint Emperor said grimly among the sainthood experts. Without any hesitation, he immediately poured his full power into his formation to face the evil spirit that was charging towards them. 4 old men that wielded metal swords hovered towards the back of the group. They were also extremely stern as they radiated with a surging sword intent. Sword formation of slaughter. One of the old men called out. Before he had even finished talking, the 4 of them stood in a sword formation with extremely fluid movements. They radiated with a supreme sword intent. The 4 of them were clearly only Saint Emperors, yet even receival experts would feel an extremely great sense of threat from their sword formation. Slaughter. The 4 old men called out loudly. Their voices reverberated through the surroundings and an extremely powerful sword intent immediately expanded. The 4 old men shone with a resplendent light and moved together. They charged towards the red mist like a huge divine sword. The 4 old men were Ada and his brothers. Although their sword formations could threaten the origin realm and even kill receival experts, the attack was clearly not enough to catch the evil spirit's eyes. The evil spirit punched out and a fist that was condensed from the red mist, colliding against the 4 brothers with devastating might. With a boom, their sword formation collapsed. The 4 of them all vomited blood and flew backwards. Although their sword formation was not weak, the disparity in strength compared to the evil spirit was just too great. However, the part of the fist that was condensed from dense mist had clearly been shaved off after the collision with the sword formation. What is this power? It's clearly puny, yet it gives me a slight sense of threat. The evil spirit thought in surprise. It could sense how extraordinary the sword chi was, but it did not think too much of it. Immediately, it turned into a cloud of red mist and shot towards the 4 brothers. It even enveloped the sainthood experts who attempted to stop it with formations, beginning to devour their lives. Whether it was the 4 brothers or the Saint Emperors, they all began to wither at a visible rate within the red mist. Their life force and their essence were being drained away at an extremely terrifying rate. Chapter 16:20. Changes to the sword chi. At that moment, wrinkles rapidly appeared on the old faces of the 4 brothers. Although the 4 of them were already old, they were still ruddy. They seemed to be in their 60s or 70s, but their skin was filled with life like an infant's. However, as the evil spirit wildly devoured their life force, their faces immediately aged. Even their silver hair darkened. Their bodies became even skinnier than before as their life force and vital energies were drained away. 4 swords as one. The 4 of them cried out together and their presence suddenly changed. They erupted with powerful sword chi as the metal swords in their hands shone with white light. As the light flickered, the 4 swords seemingly fused as one, erupting with great sword chi that seemed to far exceed their own strength to resist the devouring force. With their full resistance, the rate at which their life force was being siphoned away immediately slowed down. The sword formation used by the 4 of them were even more powerful than ones that required several dozen sainthood experts. Nearby, there was another group of sainthood experts who had been enveloped by the red mist from the evil spirit. There were several hundred of them in the group, but most of them were saint rulers and saint kings, without many saint emperors. Even when they poured their strength together to create a formation, they struggled to hold their ground against the evil spirit's terrifying force. In just a short moment, all the saint rulers died as their life force had been drained away in the group. Even most of the weaker saint kings suffered the same fate, while the few saint emperors there aged rapidly. They all became extremely old as their presence rapidly weakened. On the other hand, the evil spirit was gradually recovering after absorbing the vitality and life force from the people. Its presence was rapidly strengthening. Space trembled violently high in the sky. A terrifying pressure fell as the origin realm experts of both worlds rushed over with the god-slaying formation. The god-slaying formation shone with a hazy glow, enveloping the evil spirit below. At the same time, Shangguan Mu'er sat in the air as she played her zither. She was stern and concentrated, using her music to disturb the evil spirit. As her slender fingers danced across the strings gently, she played notes after notes which crushed towards the evil spirit's soul. The space behind her distorted violently as 36 ripples had appeared. Each ripple was 10,000 kilometers in length, stretching from one horizon to the other. The 36 ripples in space seemed to have created a zither. However, only 12 of the strings trembled among the 36. A power sword chi expanded from outer space. The Spirit King rushed towards the Tian Yuan continent with his metal sword and a pale face. He had paid an extremely heavy price from forcefully using the second move of a will that splits the heavens, so he became extremely weak, but his presence was still enough to shake the entire planet. A violet streak of light shot through the air with unbelievable speed behind the evil spirit. Jian Chen charged towards the evil spirit with surging killing intent, but he was just too distant from the evil spirit, so he required a few distance even when he traveled at full speed. However, a few seconds was more than enough for experts like that to do a lot of things. The evil spirit knew that once Jian Chen and the Spirit King caught up, it would not die, but it would lose all the energy it had absorbed earlier. As a result, it immediately devoted itself to devouring as quickly as possible without any hesitation. In just half a second, all the people within the red mist, aside from the four brothers, passed away. Even the Saint Emperors had all their energy drained away. Although the four brothers held in there with great difficulty with their sword formation, they clearly could last for much longer. The evil spirit was just too powerful. Even though their sword formation was extraordinary, they were unable to achieve the impossible with their strength at the 9th heavenly layer of Saint Emperor. They had reached the end of their line. The four brothers had considered charging out of the red mist, but the mist came from the evil spirit, so being enveloped was basically equivalent to being sucked into the evil spirit's body. When Jian Chen had used the linear lightning release before, he failed to charge out even with his speed, so it was even more impossible for the four of them. As a result, the four of them were forced into defending within the red mist. They were unable to escape at all. The god-slaying formation fell rapidly from above the evil spirit, but due to their distance, the formation required a moment before it could get close to the evil spirit. The evil spirit looked at the four brothers and produced a strange laughter. It said, "Although you four are very weak, my instincts tell me that you are very different from the others, as if I would benefit greatly if I devour the four of you. Bahaha, the two who can threaten me need some time before they can arrive to save you. That's more than enough for me to devour you. I am filled with anticipation in regards to what I will gain after devouring you." Desire filled the evil spirit's thoughts. Without any hesitation, it immediately devoted itself to devouring the four brothers. It could afford to ignore the god-slaying formation, but it needed to take on Jian Chen and the Spirit King carefully. As a result, it needed to devour the four of them before Jian Chen and the Spirit King had arrived. As the evil spirit began to target the four brothers, the sword formation from the four brothers was able to endure it, but it could not last for much longer. In just a single moment, 99% of their life force and vital energies had been drained away. The flame of their lives dimmed and could be extinguished at any time. As a result, their sword formation collapsed as well. Jian Chen and the Spirit King are about to arrive. "We will die without regrets if we can keep you busy for just a little longer," the four brothers smiled. They felt no fear towards death. Instead they felt at ease. Jian Chen's eyes suddenly narrowed as he hurried over as quickly as possible. He suddenly turned his head towards his right arm. He had been assisted by the four-sword chi from the very top of the Anatta Tower when he took it for himself. It was exactly because of the sword chi that he managed to kill the tower spirit and make it to the 9th floor, allowing him to obtain the treasured tower. After being used many times, the four-sword chi did not completely disperse, but they were only effective against receival experts. To Jian Chen, the four strands of residual sword chi were no longer of any use to him. After all, a casual strike from him would have reached reciprocity with his current strength, and if he used his full force, it would reach godhood. It was impossible for the four strands of sword chi to match up to that, so he no longer paid too much attention to the four strands of sword chi. However, Jian Chen could clearly sense that the sword chi slumbering in his arm suddenly began to tremble, as if their intelligence had been awakened. Before Jian Chen could think too much of it, the four-sword chi materialized from his arm and shot off as a streak of white light, disappearing in the blink of an eye. Jian Chen immediately became surprised by this, because even with his current strength, he failed to sense just where the four-sword chi had traveled off to. They seemed to have vanished into thin air, without any traces at all. A ball of white light suddenly appeared before the four brothers who were trapped in the red mist. The four strands of sword chi had silently entered the red mist, arriving before their foreheads as if it had teleported. Afterwards, the four balls of light shot into their heads without any hesitation at all. As the sword chi entered their heads, the smoldering flame of their lives immediately stopped weakening. Not only did it stop smoldering, it strengthened at an extremely terrifying pace, allowing their strength to suddenly erupt in that moment. In just a short moment, they completely recovered their peak strength, but it did not just stop there. Their presences continued to soar, far beyond their peak condition and beyond Saint Emperor, into the origin realm. The four brothers snapped open their eyes, which were closing. Their gazes were not weak at all, but brimming with life instead. They were sharp like swords. The fusion of the four-sword chi allowed the four brothers to break through the ninth heavenly layer Saint Emperor in that moment and reach the origin realm.
How is this possible? How?
I almost devoured you and you had reached the end of the line. So how have you become so much more powerful now? The evil spirit let out a mental pulse of shock. It had been completely taken aback by how the four brothers were able to reach the origin realm under such circumstances.
So what if you've become stronger? I can still devour you. This time, I'll devour you even if I have to pay a great price.
My instincts can't be wrong. As long as I devour you, I will benefit greatly, said the evil spirit in determination. The four brothers looked at each other and saw the smear of shock in each other's eyes. In that moment, several extremely foreign sword techniques had actually appeared in their heads. Every single one of them possessed unfathomable might, making them extremely powerful. At the same time, it was perfectly compatible with the cultivation method they practiced. Chapter 1621. Time arrives at a standstill, the sword of mortality.
Suddenly, ACI bellowed out.
As his hands changed between the seals for his sword techniques, the metal sword in his hand began to levitate. It erupted with powerful sword chi and immediately began to shine with a blinding light as if it had become a sun. Meanwhile, the sword that was only 1.3 meters long instantly became more than 10 meters, hovering in the world like a divine weapon. Sword of reincarnation. At the same time, Asen cried out like ACI. His hands changed between the seals as the metal sword in his hand also erupted with light. It radiated with an extremely powerful sword chi and instantly became over 10 meters in length. Sword of slaughter. Air bellowed out just like ACI and Asen. Like the two before him, his sword changed as his hand seals changed. Each of the 3 10 meters long metal swords shone resplendently like scorching suns. They stood in a triangular formation, seemingly resonating with one another, and their power seemed to fuse together. Meanwhile, the extremely powerful sword chi shrouded air, Asen and ACI, obscuring their figures. However, a certain blurry sword chi seemed to be present on them from time to time, giving off a profound presence. The 3 strands of sword chi seemed to possess similar presences. However, upon closer inspection, it was quite evident that the 3 strands of sword chi possessed their own forms and minute differences. Each strand of sword chi possessed an extremely profound aura, except the aura was extremely weak and not obvious. It made it extremely difficult for other people to sense it.
I actually can't devour your vitality. How is this possible?
This is impossible. You're like ants, so why can't I devour you? The evil spirit's shocked voice rang out. At that moment, it had discovered in astoundment that he was unable to suck away any vitality or life force from the 3 brothers under the shroud of the 3-sword chi. At the same time, he even sensed a sliver of threat from the 3 of them. The sense of threat was nowhere near as intense as what it felt from Jian Chen or the Spirit King, but it just made the evil spirit shiver for some reason. It did not feel something like this even from the primordial god Silk. My instincts are telling me more and more that as long as I devour you, I will benefit tremendously. There is risk in all success, so screw it all. It's not like I can die. I'll devour you no matter how great the price will be. Soon after, the evil spirit completely ignored the sense of threat it felt from the 3 brothers. It made up its mind to devour the 4 of them regardless of the price. The red mist from the evil spirit immediately began to whirl rapidly. It enveloped the 4 brothers in a massive swirl, immediately producing an even greater force of suction. At the same time, it condensed 4 huge claws from its mist, reaching towards the 4 brothers in an attempt to destroy their protective shroud. Sword of Severance. As the claws condensed from the mist reached over, Ada called out at last. He arrived above the heads of the other 3 and stood between them. He raised his right hand over his head and pointed his sword at the sky, standing in a sword formation. Immediately, Air, Asen, and SS power all gathered towards Ada. At that moment, the 4 of them entered an extremely special state. Not only had their powers completely fused together, even their vital energies and tremendous life force from just breaking through fused together, making them become even more powerful. Initial fusion of the 4, re-splitting the world. The 4 brothers called out together and they slashed out as hard as they could at the same time. The world seemed to freeze and time seemed to stop flowing when they struck out. In the entire world, Only the four swords slowly advancing through space along a specific trajectory existed. As the four swords moved, they even repulsed the laws of the world as if they possessed a mysterious power that could cut through the laws of the world at that moment. This was not because of how shocking or powerful the four swords were. After all, the four brothers had only just broken through to the origin realm. With their strength at early receival, they would not be able to reach such an astonishing level even if they poured all their strength together. Their strike was so powerful because of the aura within their swords. As the four swords moved, the expressions of Jian Chen, the Spirit King, and even the several dozen Origin Realm experts who hurried over changed slightly because they could clearly feel that the entire world seemed to have undergone some minute changes at the moment. However, the part that shocked them even more was how they could truly feel that time had come to a standstill currently. Even though it was just a moment, it completely stunned them. Jian Chen and the Spirit King were affected in particular. Their hearts surged as disbelief flooded their faces. Just as how a person could see further the higher up they were, they knew extremely well just how impossible it was to affect the time of the entire world. It was impossible unless a person possessed tremendous cultivation. Even with their current strength, it was completely impossible for them to make the time in the world come to a standstill. This was not like freezing space. Freezing space could make everything fall into silence, making it seem similar to stopping time on the surface, but it was not truly stopping time. Instead, it was something that made it feel like time had stopped. In reality, time would continue to flow silently even if an entire region of space was frozen and everything there fell silent. The laws of the world would continue to operate silently. However, time had truly stopped moments before. Even though it was just a single moment, they had sensed it very clearly. This is the presence of the Nirvanic sword formation. Impossible, this is impossible. How can the four of them grasp such a high-level sword formation? Moreover, it's impossible for them to use it even if they have grasped it with their current strength. Not only have they succeeded in using it the first time, but they even used it with such speed. Ziying and Qing Sua cried out in the twin swords. Kaya lay silently in a crystal coffin in white clothes within the Supreme Divine Hall from Mercenary City with her eyes closed. Suddenly, her eyelashes trembled gently as if she was trying to open her eyes. However, she failed no matter how hard she tried. In the end, she fell back into silence. A fist-sized little beast lay beside the coffin. It was the seven-colored heaven-devouring beast. It had always remained beside the crystal coffin in the past few years, and it had never taken a single step away from it. It did not even take part in the great battles outside. At this moment, the seven-colored heaven-devouring beast suddenly snapped open its eyes. An intelligent light flickered through its eyes, indicating that it already possessed extremely high intelligence. It stared outside and became stern. Fear and dread appeared in its eyes as well. As a divine beast, its instincts were extremely sensitive. It felt fear from the bottom of its heart from the ability that managed to influence the entire world. The elven god tree suddenly began to sway gently in the forbidden grounds of the elves. It began to shine with a layer of faint green light that was filled with a tremendous presence of life. The strongest god king of the god clan's soul woke up all of a sudden at that moment as well. Who is it? Who has influenced the time of this entire world? Adriana's voice was also filled with shock. Her soul extended rapidly soon after, and enveloped the entire world in a single moment. Quickly, she understood everything. An evil spirit. I never thought that this world would actually give birth to an evil spirit. But who are those four? They're actually able to use such a heaven-defying skill with their strength at receival? That's just unbelievable. Although it's possible to influence the time of an entire world with great skills, the greater the skills are, the greater the requirement for the caster's strength. These four people are not simple. Are they like the snow goddess of the ice goddess Hall, the reincarnation of some great expert from the saints' world? Chapter 1622. Indestructible, 1. Adriana murmured inside as she became very interested in the four brothers. But I might be wrong. They might not be the reincarnation of some great expert from the saints' world. Maybe they can use such heaven-defying abilities because of other reasons. As she thought of that, her interest towards the four brothers immediately plummeted. I never thought that human kid called Jian Chen would grow so quickly. His strength has probably reached early deity now. I can feel that he has quite the accomplishment in his comprehension of laws as well. In the saints' world, there are countless origin realm experts stuck at peak reciprocity, unable to comprehend laws and step into godhood. Even in the saints' world, all those people able to comprehend laws before reaching the peak of reciprocity are prodigies. Basically, all the people who are able to attain a comprehension like Jian Chen's before reaching peak reciprocity are geniuses groomed by large clans or sections. Once people like that become God Kings, they'll definitely end up placing on the God King's throne as long as no accidents occurred. If Jian Chen does not die, his future potential is limitless. Adriana internally sighed in amazement. She had a very good opinion of Jian Chen, holding him in very high regard. And that other person is extraordinary as well. No less than Jian Chen. But it seems like he possesses the bloodline of the Spirit Sages. The Spirit Sages are a large race in the Saints' world, except they've. Adriana sighed gently. Rumors have it that the evil spirit is extremely difficult to destroy. It is an existence that is almost indestructible. It's said that countless years ago, an evil spirit grew to a heaven-defying level, where even several Grand Primes working together could not handle it. In the end, it alerted the Anata Grand Prime. Although the evil spirit was nowhere near enough to be the opponent of the Anata Grand Prime, the Anata Grand Prime still needed to expend a tremendous amount of effort to kill the evil spirit in the end. I wonder if they can kill the evil spirit that has appeared in this world. It's a pity that although I am the greatest God King from the God Clan, I'm unable to help them in my current state. Fortunately, Xue Yunlan has left, so the seal across the tunnel to the Saints' world has been removed. Although I can't return to the Saints' world through the tunnel without paying a price, I'll have to take the war god away with me even if I have to suffer the consequences on the condition that they can't stop the evil spirit. Adriana's tree that had been materialized from her life stood in the forbidden ground of the elves. Although it did not take part in the battle, it paid close attention to everything happening on the battlefield. However, when Adriana's soul swept across the Tianyuan continent, both Jian Chen and the Spirit King seemed to sense it. Jian Chen was not surprised. After all, he had learnt the existence of her long ago, but the Spirit King was astounded. He gazed in the direction of the elves on the wasteland continent with shock plastered across his face. He knew extremely well just how powerful the soul that swept past them just then was. It was just a soul, yet it made him feel like he was facing an entire universe. He felt as insignificant as an ant before the soul. Jian Chen, you must have sensed it as well. Who is that? I never thought there would be such a terrifying expert hidden here, the Spirit King said to Jian Chen through a communication technique. He was extremely stern. That's a God King who came down from the Saints' world, but she was heavily injured in the past and still hasn't recovered. You don't need to pay heed to her. She won't interfere with the matters of this world. It's not like she has the power to interfere with the problem we're facing right now because she lost her body. Her remaining soul and the tremendous life force from before have transformed into a tree of life, said Jian Chen. A God King. The Spirit King's face changed slightly, and he immediately felt parched. God Kings were existences that had reached the very apex of godhood. Although he possessed the battle prowess of an early deity, his personal cultivation level still belonged to reciprocity. God King was still far too distant for him. I never thought your world concealed a God King. That's just unbelievable, the Spirit King sighed in amazement. Jian Chen smiled with deep meaning when he heard these words. He said, originally, we had two God Kings. The other God King was even more powerful. The God King that you've discovered just now was injured by the other one, except the other one has left this world already and returned to the Saints' world. The Spirit King sucked in a deep breath. What Jian Chen had told him was just too stunning. It reverberated through his mind like an explosion, causing his heart to surge. To both him and Jian Chen, God Kings were insurmountable, undefeatable existences. Even if they were just reduced to a soul, it was still enough to shock the world. Not to mention that there had even been a second God King who was even more powerful than the one he had just discovered, which deeply astounded the Spirit King. Who are you? What is this power? How is it so terrifying? A frightened mental pulse boomed through the surroundings. Everyone sensed it, and it snapped Jian Chen and the Spirit King out of their thoughts. The evil spirit that had become a swirl experienced a rapid decline in its presence. Very soon, it dropped to mid-reciprocity, early reciprocity, before directly falling below reciprocity. It did not stop there as its strength continued to decline, falling to late returnance, mid-returnance, and finally stabilizing at early returnance. Although Ada and his brothers remained at early receival, the sword formation from the four of them was just too powerful. It directly caused the evil spirit's late reciprocity strength to plummet to early returnance. The evil spirit was originally extremely powerful, to the point where even Jian Chen and the Spirit King were not its opponent when working together. However, the evil spirit suffered injury after injury since the battle had begun, so its strength was nowhere like before anymore. The red mist was its body, so every wisp dispersed would result in a loss of strength. The four brothers had dispersed most of the red mist with their attack earlier, dealing an extremely severe strike to the evil spirit, which was why its strength had plummeted so severely. However, the four brothers turned extremely pale after using the great sword formation. They became haggard and seemed extremely weak. Clearly, they had paid a price for using the sword formation. "I want to devour you and regain my lost strength," the evil spirit roared crazily. It felt both shocked and furious right now. It had never thought that the four sources of sustenance that were not even powerful enough to draw its attention would actually manage to deal a heavy strike at the crucial moment. It could probably no longer escape from Jian Chen and the Spirit King's pursuit with its current strength. Chapter 1623. Indestructible, 2. This was all because as its strength declined, it would struggle to escape from Jian Chen and the Spirit King even if it tried to flee using the folds of space. This ability was directly proportional to its strength. "Jian Chen, it'll be up to you next," Ada said to Jian Chen through a communication technique. His voice was extremely weak. He was now incapacitated. A gleam of light flashed through Jian Chen's eyes. He turned into a blur and caught up with the evil spirit in a flash. He directly stabbed the red mist. This strike only flickered with resplendent white sword qi. Most of it was hidden inside without leaking out to prevent damaging the Tianyuan continent with its shockwaves. At the same time, the azure and violet glow had completely vanished. Jian Chen could sense that Adriana was constantly observing the events here. To avoid revealing the origins of the twin swords, he concealed the unique glow of the sword so that none of it was emitted. He knew that not all god kings knew the origins of the twin swords, but he was unwilling to risk it. The Zi-Ying sword stabbed into the red mist with powerful sword qi, immediately causing the red mist to churn violently. Jian Chen's attack did not contain his full strength, but it had just managed to reach the level of godhood. Wherever the sword passed by, the surrounding red mist would begin to disperse. The evil spirit's strength declined once again, dropping to receival from early returnants. When the evil spirit's strength was similar to or even greater than Jian Chen's, his attacks were unable to harm it much at all, allowing it to endure them relatively easily with its own strength. However, as it grew weaker, it gradually became more and more difficult for it to endure the godhood-level attacks from Jian Chen. Virtually every time he struck out would be enough to deal a heavy blow to the evil spirit and rapidly shave away its strength. At the same time, the Origin Realm experts with the god-slaying formation finally arrived. It rapidly descended from the air and enveloped the evil spirit, using its sword qi to injure the evil spirit. The Spirit King also returned from outer space. He stood opposite to Jian Chen and began to attack the evil spirit with his full strength. However, the two of them were just too powerful. They were able to fight recklessly in outer space, but they had to act extremely careful each time they struck out to avoid destroying the continent now. They completely concealed their energy without letting any of it leak out. Surrounded, the evil spirit was no longer able to devour the four brothers. At the same time, its strength became weaker and weaker after each attack, before dropping below the Origin Realm to sainthood. Jian Chen had charged into the evil spirit's red mist to save the four brothers who were still trapped in there. "You can never kill me, my sustenance. I am indestructible. No one can kill me," the evil spirit roared wildly. After dropping to sainthood, there was no longer any hope for it to escape. All it could do was curse secretly. If it had not wanted to devour the four brothers and benefit greatly, it would not have fallen to such a state, not only failing the devouring in the crucial moment but even getting heavily injured by the four of them. "Remove the god-slaying formation. Leave it to me and the Spirit King," Jian Chen said with a deep voice. The evil spirit had now become equivalent to a saint emperor, so they no longer required the god-slaying formation. In fact, the formation would even get in their way if it was maintained. Without any hesitation, the Origin Realm experts from the two worlds immediately removed the god-slaying formation. As soon as the formation was removed, Jian Chen controlled the primordial god silk to keep the evil spirit trapped there, so it could not escape. The evil spirit charged into the primordial god silk in various places constantly in an attempt to escape, but it could no longer break out of the netting with its current strength. Faced with Jian Chen and the Spirit King's attacks, its strength dropped once again, this time to the mortal realm. Its red mist vanished as well, revealing the evil spirit's core. The core was a fist-sized ball of red liquid. It seemed as demonic as blood, radiating with an extremely icy cold and evil presence. This was the core of the evil spirit. Only when it was destroyed would the evil spirit truly be vanquished. Jian Chen directly stabbed the evil spirit's core through the gaps in the net, but his move passed through the core. Not only had it failed to cut it in half, but not even a sliver of the core's power had been used up, as if his attack was useless against the core. Jian Chen's eyes narrowed at this scene. The Spirit King's face changed slightly as well. He slashed down and the outcome was the same as Jian Chen's move. The Cloud Stream sword passed through the core and failed to harm it at all. You can't kill me. I am indestructible. A mental pulse spread out from the core with the wild laughter of the evil spirit. Its words contained a sense of mockery. It seemed to be mocking the sources of sustenance that were overestimating themselves. Jian Chen's face sank. With a cold snort, he used martial soul force with his soul at reciprocity. Immediately, a unique power completely condensed from the power of the soul suddenly appeared. The power was formless and unable to harm the physical body, but it especially targeted the soul. It then shot towards the evil spirit with a flash of light as a sharp sword under Jian Chen's control. Jian Chen still had not found the method to push martial soul force to its greatest potential in the past few years, but his soul had already reached reciprocity after all, so the usage of martial soul force immediately led to the permeation of a certain pressure in the surroundings. The expressions of all the Origin Realm experts of the two worlds changed when they felt this presence. To their shock, they discovered that this pressure suppressed their souls. Even though the pressure did not target them, basically all the receival experts among them could clearly feel a sense of dread from the depths of their souls. It was like their souls would immediately become extremely heavily injured if the pressure targeted them. Their souls might even directly disperse. The pressure formed an extremely great threat towards all the receival experts present. Only the returnance experts managed to maintain their composure. Of course, they would feel the exact same feeling as the receival experts if the pressure targeted them. Martial soul force was an extremely great power, so great that it was enough to send chills down the spines of many people from the Saints' world. Martial soul force could basically kill experts of the same level instantly, and martial soul force would still heavily injure even those stronger than the user. However, Jian Chen still had not grasped the method to use martial soul force, so he was unable to demonstrate its full potential. As a result, his martial soul force right now could only threaten those weaker than him. The martial soul force passed through the evil spirit's body as an invisible sword, but to Jian Chen's disappointment, it failed to harm the evil spirit as well. Chapter 1624. Indestructible, 3. Although the evil spirit possessed a consciousness, it was not a true living organism. Rather, it was an extremely unique existence. It was not bound by the laws of the world. It was impossible to kill it with normal methods. The weakened evil spirit had completely lost its ability to flee. The primordial god Silk had firmly trapped it. Both Jian Chen and the Spirit King attempted many methods to try and kill the evil spirit, but it seemed like its core was just as it had been described, an indestructible existence. No matter what attacks Jian Chen and the Spirit King used, they only managed to disperse the evil spirit's power and failed to harm its core. Master, it said that only the primordial god Silk can nullify the crisis of the world. You must use the power of the primordial god Silk to destroy it. The voices of the sword spirits rang out in Jian Chen's head, immediately filling Jian Chen with bitterness. He had considered using the primordial god Silk to kill the evil spirit long ago, but it had already been snapped into 2 segments, and the power within it was basically exhausted. The tiny amount remaining could only keep the evil spirit trapped. It was nowhere near enough to kill the evil spirit. He had also tried channeling his chaotic force into the primordial god Silk, but the outcome achieved was insignificant. Even if he poured all his chaotic force into the primordial god Silk, it would not be nearly enough to reach the power required to wipe out the evil spirit. He estimated that it still would not be enough even if the Spirit King, the Origin Realm experts, and the Sainthood experts from both worlds poured their powers together. The primordial god Silk's power was extremely unique. It was of exceedingly great quality, where Saint Force and Origin energy completely paled in comparison. The requirement to refine other energies into the primordial god Silk's power was obviously terrifying. Is the evil spirit really unkillable? Jian Chen murmured with a very heavy heart. The Spirit King's face also sank. He stared at the core of the evil spirit trapped in the primordial god Silk. He had also discovered that he was unable to do anything to the evil spirit. Since we can't kill it, it looks like we can only keep the evil spirit imprisoned for all eternity. Once we become even more powerful, we can come up with another method to kill it. I'll use the primordial god silk as a seal and keep it trapped in the Anata Tower. Nothing should go wrong like that, Jian Chen thought. He really did not want to reveal the Anata Tower at this moment since Adriana was watching. After all, the Anata Tower was a famed treasure of the Anata Grand Prime. Its power was beyond doubt. Even though it was damaged, he believed that there would still be countless experts who were willing to go as far as to fight to the death for the tower. Once Adriana leaked the fact that he possessed the Anata Tower in the Saint's world, there would be no more peace for him. However, the power within the primordial god silk was only being depleted, so the time the evil spirit could remain trapped was being reduced as well. He needed to find a way to imprison the evil spirit before the primordial god silk's power was completely exhausted. Jian Chen had no confidence in imprisoning the evil spirit on the Tian Yuan continent or the world of Forsaken Saints. He could only think of two places where he could keep the evil spirit trapped, the first being the Supreme Divine Hall of Mercenary City, and the second being the Anata Tower. The Supreme Divine Hall of Mercenary City was in perfect shape, but in terms of quality, it was nowhere as great as the damaged Anata Tower. Jian Chen would never trust the Supreme Divine Hall to keep the evil spirit trapped, so the safest method could only be the Anata Tower. Jian Chen no longer worried about the Anata Tower being exposed after making up his mind. He immediately took it out so he could keep the evil spirit trapped in there. The Anata Tower stood in Jian Chen's hand as an inch-tall structure. Even though it had been shrunken, its surface riddled with sword qi still had a presence. Each strand of sword qi flickered with light and gave off shocking sword intent. However, the 4 strands of sword qi at the very top of the tower were dull and lifeless, making them stand out among the other dazzling sword qi. The moment Jian Chen took out the Anata Tower, the 4 brothers who a few Saint Emperors supported glanced over at the tower in his hand as if they had sensed something. Their dull eyes lit up at that moment. Without any exception, their eyes became fixated on the dull sword slashes, and they seemed to become lost. A mysterious force seemed to be drawing them over. It also filled them with a sense of familiarity as well as unfamiliarity. The damaged door to the first floor of the tower opened and a great force enveloped the evil spirit's core, dragging it towards the tower. The evil spirit's core trembled violently, resisting with its full strength. It sensed an extremely terrifying omen, so it could not afford to be sucked into the Anata Tower. Although the tower was damaged, it was still enough to send chills down its spine. However, the evil spirit was just too weak right now. It could not resist the tower under Jian Chen's control. Its core broke free from the primordial god silk and inched towards the Anata Tower. This is all because of you, my sources of sustenance. Come, my second power. Tremble and shake before it. The evil spirit bellowed urgently with determination. After it bellowed, an extremely great spatial crack suddenly appeared in outer space. Within the crack was a blood-red world that shone a demonic red. An icy cold presence similar to the evil spirit's core leaked out. Jian Chen and the Spirit King's face suddenly changed when they saw this. Disbelief flooded their eyes. They could obviously tell that all the evil spirit's power was stored within the huge crack in space with their eyes. At the same time, the power was completely equivalent to what the evil spirit possessed in its peak condition. Impossible, Jian Chen and the Spirit King's faces paled slightly. All the Origin Realm experts and Sainthood experts of the 2 worlds felt despair. The evil spirit in its peak condition was so powerful and was undefeatable. If it had not used a method similar to self-destruction to break out of the primordial god silk earlier, Jian Chen and the Spirit King would never have been able to dominate the evil spirit. Yet at this moment, just when they were about to suppress the evil spirit and achieve victory, they had never thought that the evil spirit would still be hiding such great power. This made Jian Chen and the Spirit King feel despair as well. Once the evil spirit returned to its peak strength, they would have nothing to fight against it. After all, the primordial god silk had basically become useless and the Spirit King could no longer display his peak strength after paying the price from using the second move of a will that splits the heavens. We can't let the power descend. A sliver of determination and madness appeared in Jian Chen's eyes. He ignored all consequences as he urged the Anata Tower to suck away the evil spirit. However, the evil spirit seemed to have formed a connection with the tremendous power hidden within the spatial crack when it appeared. No matter what Jian Chen did, he was unable to suck the evil spirit into the Anata Tower. It was like he was not just sucking the evil spirit's core but the tremendously evil power in the crack as well. It was not that the Anata Tower was not powerful enough, but Jian Chen was not strong enough. After all, The power hidden within the crack had completely exceeded his own strength. I absorbed the powers from that rock, except I was never able to completely fuse the powers of the rock. I was unable to control the two powers simultaneously with the strength of my consciousness as well, so I left the control of one of the powers to a fragment of my soul long ago. I hid it into a world I had carved out myself. All you have done is made me waste one of the powers I had absorbed from the rock. I planned on devouring you all so that my consciousness could become even more powerful than fuse the two powers afterwards, but I never thought that you would all be much harder to deal with than I had thought. Forcing me to use my second power, a mental pulse was emitted from the core of the evil spirit. It was filled with resentment. Chapter 1625. The power of all. As the evil spirit's mental pulse spread out, everyone became rather pale, whether it be the sainthood experts or the origin realm experts. Despair had even filled the hearts of many people. Even Jian Chen and the Spirit King had never become so stern before. Shock, disbelief, and some despair filled their cold gazes. They had never expected that they had only exhausted half of the evil spirit's power after so much effort and paying such a great price. It actually could not control the other half of its power, so it separated it from itself and hid it into a miniature world, controlled by a fragment of his soul, akin to a clone. The second portion of power was so great that it was completely equivalent to what the evil spirit possessed at its peak condition. Once the evil spirit fused with its second portion of power, it would return to its peak condition. Even if Jian Chen and the Spirit King worked together, it would be impossible for them to achieve victory over such an evil spirit. Not to mention how the primordial god silk that was particularly effective against the evil spirit had basically become useless. All its power had been drained, so it was unable to pose any harm to the evil spirit anymore. Are we really all going to die because of this crisis? Jian Chen's heart was filled with sorrow. Both he and the Spirit King had far exceeded the limits of the lower world in terms of strength, having reached godhood-level battle prowess. It should have been extremely easy for them to deal with the crisis of the world with their strength and the primordial god silk. However, the crisis had become more powerful than it had ever been due to the existence of the Yin-Yang Saint Rock. It had already exceeded all the calamities that had appeared in various other lower worlds, so they were helpless against it even with their tremendous strength. It still can't recover right now. We can't let it fuse with its other power, or there'll be no more hope for us. We have to stop it no matter the cost, the Spirit King said with a heavy heart. Stop it, Jian Chen murmured softly. He gazed at the huge crack in outer space and became extremely grim. He had originally planned to imprison the evil spirit's core in the Anatta Tower. However, its second core of power had begun descending, so the evil spirit had established a certain connection with it, which prevented him from sucking the evil spirit into the tower now. There's no way for us to stop it. The only method is to destroy the core of the crisis before it fuses, Jian Chen replied sternly. Destroy it? We've tried everything, but we still haven't even been able to touch it. How would you destroy it like that? The Spirit King was stern. Once the evil spirit fused with its other half, the Tianyuan continent was not the only place that would face destruction. The world of Forsaken Saints would not be able to avoid the same fate either. There's still one last way we can try. Even if it doesn't end up destroying the core, we've already run out of choices. We have to try it no matter what, even if we only manage to heavily injure the core because we've really reached the end of the line, Jian Chen said sternly. He sent his consciousness into the primordial god Silk to control it under the Spirit King's doubtful gaze. The primordial god Silk that trapped the evil spirit source began to elongate at that moment. It shot off into the distance with unbelievable speed, disappearing into the horizon in a single moment. As it continued to spread out, the golden thread seemed like the trunk of a tree, constantly producing branches that forked away from it. In the end, it seemed to have become an extremely large golden net, enveloping the entire Tianyuan continent in a few dozen seconds. It did not just stop there as it continued towards the Sea Realm, Beast God Continent, and Wasteland Continent. In the end, the territories of all the races were enveloped within the golden net. From outer space, golden netting seemed to cover the entire planet. The net seemed to have expanded across every inch of the planet, without missing any parts at all. The threads of the huge net had filled all the streets and alleyways in populous cities. After the primordial god Silk enveloped the entire world in the form of a net, it completely ran out of power. It had been completely drained, without a drop remaining. The core of the evil spirit trapped inside began to shake as well. The primordial god silk no longer posed any threat to the evil spirit at all now that all its power had run out.
At this moment, Jian Chen became determined.
He grabbed the strand of golden thread before him, and the chaotic force within him began to surge, channeling into the primordial god silk without holding back at all.
It was transformed into the primordial god silk's power. Everyone, pour all your origin energy and saint force into the golden thread. This is the last thing we can do. Even if we can't destroy the core of the crisis, we have to deal a heavy blow to it. Even if this won't save us from death, we can't let the core of the crisis have it easy. Jian Chen's voice rang out across the world. Not only did it spread throughout the entire Tianyuan continent, it even reverberated in the Beast God continent, Wasteland continent, and the Sea Realm. At that moment, his voice could be clearly heard by the world. Many Earth Saint Masters and Heaven Saint Masters raised their heads toward the distance on the Tianyuan continent, in the direction of the voice. They were extremely stern.
Among them, the people who possessed specific backgrounds had already known part of the secret. Hence, when they saw the golden threads that basically filled up the world, they could already sense that the battle had developed to an extremely horrible level, so horrible that it required the power of even them, people who had not reached sainthood. At that moment, many people slowly held onto the golden thread and poured their saint force into it without any hesitation with heavy hearts. Of course, there were some Heaven Saint Masters and Earth Saint Masters who had no idea what was going on. However, they could sense the undefiable will within the voice that boomed through the world, actually making them feel like they had to obey. They grabbed the golden thread whether they wanted to or not and offered up their energy. At that moment, there were not only just Heaven Saint Masters and Earth Saint Masters who were channeling all their saint force into the golden threads. Even those below Earth Saint Master did the same. They did not have a lot of saint force and their saint force was extremely weak, but upon accumulation, it still became a formidable power. Chapter 1626. The bloodline of the Forsaken Saints. Among them were also some strong-willed people who were not affected by Jian Chen's voice, as well as those who just stared at the golden thread that had appeared from the distance in confusion. However, the gentle sound of a zither rang out shortly afterwards and those people who did not do anything yet immediately became dazed. Soon, they extended their hands and grabbed the golden thread like robots, pouring their saint force into it without holding back at all. This did not just happen on the Tianyuan continent. Even the many fighters from the Wasteland continent, Beast God continent, Sea Realm, and the various islands offered up their power. They poured all of it into the primordial god silk, and it was quickly converted into the primordial god silk's power. The crack in outer space grew wider and wider as the evil power hiding within the blood-red clouds slowly glided out. It slowly traveled towards the core of the evil spirit. The evil spirit could probably fuse with its second power in just a few seconds if this continued. Fortunately, only a fragment of the evil spirit's soul controlled the second source of power. The fragment of its soul was unable to use the tremendous power for battle, so the second core of power would only demonstrate its might after fusing with the core of the evil spirit. All the sainthood and origin realm experts rapidly paled on the battlefield. They had channeled all their saint force and origin energy into the primordial god silk as fast as they could, so they became weaker and weaker due to the loss of energy. After receiving the support of such great power, the primordial god silk began to glow once more. At the same time, as more and more origin energy and saint force was converted into its own power, the golden thread shone brighter and brighter, becoming more and more dazzling. Eventually, it shone like the sun, illuminating the entire world. No. How can this damned power appear again? I hate this power. I hate this presence. Hurry up and descend my second half. Let us fuse together. A mental pulse filled with dread and urgency spread out from the core of the evil spirit. Even though the core was indestructible, it was also the evil spirit's weakest form. In its current state, it was able to ignore everything from Jian Chen and the others, but it was unable to ignore the power of the primordial god silk. The primordial god silk's power was able to harm its so-called indestructible core. The core of the evil spirit trembled more and more violently. It had finally suffered heavy wounds from the primordial god silk, dispersing at a visible rate. However, the rate of dispersion was basically nothing compared to the entire core. Making the entire core dissolve would probably take 10 days at the very least. However, the evil spirit's second half of power had already begun to descend from outer space. It enveloped the Tianyuan continent as a huge blood-red cloud, dyeing the sky red. Blood seemed to splatter across the entire world. The second half would fuse with the evil spirit in just a few seconds at this rate. Jian Chen, the Spirit King, all the Origin Realm experts, and the Sainthood experts raised their heads at the sky at this moment. They stared at the descending cloud. All their eyes were filled with an unwillingness to accept reality, but more people had gazes filled with despair. They all understood that they would all be doomed once the evil spirit fused with the second half of its power. Jian Chen smiled miserably. He had never thought that he would lose his life due to this crisis. It also filled him with a refusal to accept the truth. There were some receival protectors from the world of forsaken saints, who had considered escaping this world to the saints' world. However, the opening of the tunnel could not be completed in such a short amount of time, and it was impossible for the evil spirit to just let them go. Fairy Hao Yu had already stood up in the bright moon divine hall. Her eyes shone and her face was stern. She said to Jian Chen, give up on this world. I'll forcefully open the passage to the saints' world by burning my soul. You can take those close with you to leave with me. If you don't go now, it'll be too late. Fairy Hao Yu had already made up her mind to leave by herself at any time. However, she needed to use a secret technique if she wanted to leave alone, and she was not willing to pay the price so easily. She would also suffer the risk of having her soul disperse entirely. After all, she no longer possessed her peak strength. She was just a fragile soul now. If she could persuade Jian Chen, she would get Jian Chen to take the bright moon divine hall and leave this place even if she had to burn her soul to forcefully open the passage. The price she would pay would lessen drastically as well. If Jian Chen plans on being stubborn, I have to leave by myself even if I have to take the huge risk with my life, thought Fairy Hao Yu. The Tian Yuan continent reveres me as their human sovereign. I carry the burden of that name, so how can I abandon them and leave all by myself? Not to mention that I am not one who fears death. Jian Chen declined firmly. At the same time, a blurry figure appeared on the top of the elven god tree that remained rooted in the territory of the elves. She was the greatest god king of the god clan. Adriana. There's no more hope for this world. Looks like I can only abandon the clansmen here and leave with the war god. Adriana murmured to herself. The blood-red cloud rapidly descended from the sky. It radiated with a tremendous pressure. Meanwhile, all the Origin Realm and Sainthood experts from the two worlds clenched the primordial god silk tightly in their hands. They were filled with a strong sense of refusal to give in. At this moment, a saint ruler from the world of forsaken saints actually cut his hand as he had used too much power. Blood immediately began to flow and dripped onto the primordial god silk. It was actually silently absorbed. The section that the saint ruler held onto began to shine brightly the moment the primordial god silk absorbed the blood. It was even brighter than other parts. However, it was not that obvious, making it impossible to tell with the naked eye. However, Jian Chen had already refined the primordial god silk, so he had established a connection with the threads long ago. He was able to catch any changes to the primordial god silk. He became stunned when the blood was absorbed and immediately turned his eyes towards the saint ruler from the foreign world. Jian Chen's eyes immediately began to shine when he saw the saint ruler's cut hand. Blood can actually boost the power of the primordial god silk? But I've clearly already tried it before. The blood of my chaotic body doesn't cause any reactions from the primordial god silk, Jian Chen thought. He found it to be rather doubtful, but he still immediately gave out an order. Everyone, cut open your hand and drip your blood onto the primordial god silk. Quite a few people obeyed immediately, cutting open their hands and letting their blood drip onto the primordial god silk. There was a portion of them whose blood did not fuse into the primordial god silk, but the primordial god silk absorbed the blood of the others. The primordial god silk immediately began to shine much brighter after absorbing the blood, glowing with an even more radiant gold. The changes to its luminance could be discovered with a single glance, and it became even more effective against the core of the evil spirit. It's the world of forsaken saints. The blood of their fighters actually has a wondrous effect on the primordial god silk. Not only can the primordial god silk absorb their blood, but their blood seems to be extremely nourishing to the primordial god silk. However, the blood from the fighters of our world has no effect. Jian Chen immediately beamed in surprise and cried out involuntarily when he discovered this. The bloodline of the people from the world of forsaken saints is not simple. The sword spirits murmured as well. The Spirit King's eyes narrowed, and he immediately cried out, "Quick, all forsaken saints, immediately let your blood flow and let the primordial god silk absorb it. This is the only hope to stop the crisis of the world." With that, the Spirit King cut open his hand before everyone else and let his blood fuse into the primordial god silk.
The other people from the world of Forsaken Saints did not hesitate either. They all cut open their hands as if their final hopes laid on that and offered up their blood. As expected, the primordial god Silk absorbed all of the blood from the Forsaken Saints. It did not leave a single speck. Immediately, the primordial god Silk exploded with light, and its powers rapidly recovered. The evil spirit cried out miserably with the strengthening of the primordial god Silk. Its core rapidly dispersed, clearly receiving great damage. Jian Chen glanced at the sky. The cloud of blood had already arrived above his head, and would fuse with the core of the evil spirit in just a few seconds. At a time like this, the primordial god Silk was unable to wipe out the evil spirit's core no matter how powerful it became. There's not enough time. Jian Chen's heart sank heavily. Chapter 1627. A God King's assistance. At this moment, a green light shot over from the distance at an unbelievable speed. An illusionary tree had arrived in a single moment. Its tremendous presence of life permeated the surroundings and stopped the cloud of blood from descending. When the cloud of blood came into contact with the illusionary tree, it actually came to a halt. I'll sacrifice 30% of my life force to stop the evil spirit's power and buy time for you. However, in my current form, 30% of my life force is nowhere near as great as 30% from when I was at my peak condition, so it won't be able to earn that much time. You have 1 day at most. If you can't destroy the evil spirit's core in a day's time, then I can only leave here with the war god. Adriana's voice rang out in Jian Chen and the Spirit King's mind. The Origin Realm experts of the two worlds only saw an illusionary tree that levitated and shone with endless green light, stopping the descent of the evil spirit's power. They did not hear Adriana's words. Jian Chen immediately became overjoyed when he heard her words. Adriana was far more powerful than he had ever imagined. He originally thought that Adriana did not even have the power to interfere. She had been reduced to a soul after all, so no matter how powerful she was in the past, she would have become extremely weak. At the same time, Adriana was a god king from a higher world. Her status was more than enough for her to view those below her as ants. Why would she care about the lesser organisms of the Tianyuan continent? He had already witnessed this from Protector Xueqi. Protector Xueqi had ended an entire era in the past after all. However, he never thought that even though Adriana clearly had the power to take Tai Ta away, she did not do so. Instead, she sacrificed 30% of her life force to help them earn a day's time. Jian Chen felt rather surprised that a mighty god king would be willing to pay such a great price to assist people that appeared to be ants in her eyes, even after she herself had ended up in such a miserable state. But regardless of all that, Adriana's actions were a great kindness towards the 4 races of the Tianyuan continent and the various lives in the world of Forsaken Saints. A gleam of light flashed across the Spirit King's eyes. He gazed deeply in the direction of the wasteland continent before looking at the illusionary tree that had stopped the descent of the evil spirit's power. The light in his eyes flickered a little before he devoted himself to pouring his blood into the primordial god Silk. At the same time, he revolved his cultivation method to quickly replenish the blood he had just lost. What is this? There is actually a terrifyingly tremendous power that can go against the crisis of the world? All the Origin Realm experts from the two worlds gazed at the sky. They stared at the ball of resplendent green light in complete shock. They were not the only ones who reacted this way. All the sainthood experts from the two worlds stared at the sky as well. All their gazes gathered on the illusionary tree hovering in the sky as they became both shocked and delighted. That seems to be the elven god tree? No, that's impossible. The tree may be extraordinary and displayed great power in the ancient times, but it's only equivalent to saint emperors. How did it stop the terrifying evil power? The Origin Realm experts from the Tianyuan continent understood the origins of the tree. Disbelief covered their faces. That's the elven god tree. Since when did their divine tree become so powerful that it can stop the evil power? Even Sovereign Jian Chen and the Spirit King from the world of Forsaken Saints can't accomplish that. The sainthood experts from the 100 races all stared at the tree in the sky in shock. Disbelief was plastered on all of their faces, and some of them even rubbed their eyes out of doubt. They suspected that they had seen an illusion. The elven god tree had existed for a very long time. The various races from the 100 races were all familiar with its existence, but since when did it become so powerful? All of them became even more shocked when they sensed the unimaginably dense life force from the tree. The life force was just too tremendous.
completely exceeding the understanding of many people. They could even vaguely feel that it could compete with the evil power. Quick, don't waste time. We only have a day. If we don't destroy the core of the crisis in a day's time, we'll all die, the Spirit King said with a heavy voice. They could only rely on the Forsaken Saints to destroy the evil spirit because their bloodline was special. Only their bloodline could assist the primordial god Xueqi. At that moment, all the people from the world of Forsaken Saints that had come to the Tianyuan continent got involved. All the sainthood experts, protectors, elders, and even the Spirit King offered up their blood to support the primordial god Xueqi. On the other hand, the people from the four races ran out of things to do as they were no longer of any use in the current situation. The primordial god Xueqi shone brighter and brighter before becoming a golden disk like the sun. It illuminated the entire world, outshining the blood-red sky and dyeing it golden instead. The core of the evil spirit trapped inside could no longer remain calm. It rampaged wildly as it shrieked out miserably. It was filled with pain. Its so-called indestructible core was shrinking bit by bit. Once it completely vanished, the evil spirit would cease to exist. This lasted for half a day, and the evil spirit's core shrank by a third of its size. The Forsaken Saints who had offered up their blood had all become pale long ago. They were haggard, and many of the saint rulers and saint kings could not even maintain a stable footing. They were about to fall out of the sky at any time. Every single one of them had become extremely weak due to the severe loss of blood. Although their bodies constantly produced more blood, it was nowhere near as fast as the consumption rate. At the same time, it took a very large toll of their bodies to constantly produce new blood, severely exhausting their vital energies. Meanwhile, people constantly surged out of the tunnel connecting the Tianyuan continent and the world of Forsaken Saints. These people had especially hurried over under the orders of the Spirit King to offer up their strength to fend off the crisis. Jian Chen looked around, and he gradually frowned. Half of the time they had already passed, but 2/3 of the evil spirit's core still remained. If this continued, they would not be able to destroy the evil spirit's core in time. Although people hurried over constantly from the world of Forsaken Saints, their strength was nowhere close to the people who had taken part in the battle in the very beginning. At the same time, the original saint rulers and saint kings from the foreign world would have to stop after 4 more hours because they had basically reached their limits and were almost bled dry. Chapter 1628. Courage to face death. Jian Chen was not the only person who recognized this problem. All the Origin Realm experts and sainthood experts noticed it as well. It was completely impossible for them to wipe out the core of the evil spirit in just a day's time. The bloodletting of the Forsaken Saints continued, but everyone had lost their excitement and hope from half a day ago. They all felt heavy and breathless inside once again, as if they were facing the end of the world. As a result, the atmosphere became extremely heavy. I am not a sole person back in the world of Forsaken Saints. There are several tens of thousand clansmen behind me. As the Patriarch, if I can't even protect my own clansmen, I can never live up to the name of Patriarch. If everyone, including me and my clansmen, cannot avoid death in the end, I must die on the front lines as the Patriarch and lay my life down to protect my people. A saint emperors from the world of Forsaken Saints suddenly began to laugh aloud. Soon afterwards, he suddenly burst into white flames. His body rapidly dissolved in the flames, turning into an even greater power of his bloodline, which was all channeled into the primordial god Xueqi. Mandalf! Some people cried out in sorrow. Mandalf was currently burning his own vital energies and his own body to assist in destroying the evil spirit's core. At that moment, everyone's gazes gathered on Mandalf. Everyone looked at him with admiration and respect, whether they were the experts of the four races or from the world of Forsaken Saints. Even if I die, I have to die before my clansmen. I will not be able to protect you anymore in the future. I shall be leaving first, Mandalf smiled. His body turned into ashes in the end under the white flames. Mandalf's right. We're out of options now. If we don't destroy this damn thing here, all of our people in the world of Forsaken Saints probably won't be able to avoid death once this thing fully recovers. Since I'll die either way, why don't I die for a purpose? Soon afterwards, another saint emperor from the foreign world stood forward and righteously spoke. Just like Mandalf, he began to burn his vital energies until he died. Even his body was reduced to ashes in the end. Their vital energies had been severely exhausted already, so they were probably unable to produce any more blood at all. Burning their vital energies and their bodies was akin to completely igniting the final sliver of their bloodline left in their bodies, offering up one last portion of power. Even their lives had turned into a part of the bloodline's power. At this moment, a saint emperor from the foreign world looked at Jian Chen and asked with clasped hands, "Sovereign Jian Chen, did the ignition of their vital essences contribute to destroying this wretched thing?" Jian Chen looked at the saint emperor. He saw calmness, the courage to face death, and firm determination. Jian Chen nodded sternly. He already knew the Saint Emperor's thoughts and plan. "If that's the case, I don't need to worry," said the Saint Emperor. With that, white flames erupted from his body as well, and he was reduced to ashes in the end. "Ha ha ha, the situation has already developed to a point like this. There's no need for everyone to fear death. Choosing to die willingly is a courageous death. If our sacrifice can save the lives of a quadrillion clansmen, they will always remain grateful to us. However, if we continue to fear death, we'll only be able to live for a few hours longer. Is there any point to that?" An old man said loudly and sternly. He was also a saint emperor from the world of forsaken saints. Afterwards, the old man also ignited his vital energies and his body, burning to ashes. Perhaps due to the infectious atmosphere, more and more people from the world of forsaken saints gave heroic and righteous speeches before laying down their lives. There were not just saint emperors, but saint kings, saint rulers, and so on were included as well. Their sacrifice generated even greater power for the primordial god silk, allowing it to glow dazzlingly. "Jian Chen, the environment of our world is horrible. It's unsuitable for people below sainthood to live in. Many children and weaker clansmen die to the horrible conditions basically daily. One of the reasons that we came to your world was to move on to the saints' world, but we also sought a better environment for our people to settle down in. Although we have invaded your world in the past and made you suffer heavy losses, our race will use this opportunity to make it up to you. I, Gongxi Ming, am willing to lay my life down to stop the crisis. I only hope that you can give the weaker people of my race a habitable place if the crisis is averted. I will be filled with endless gratitude even in the afterlife." Gongxi Ming bowed deeply towards Jian Chen before erupting in white flames. He began to burn his vital energies as well. "Gongxi Ming." Chang Jingyun stared at Gongxi Ming with many emotions. Her heart throbbed with indescribably bitterness as she watched her friend of several dozen millennia gradually approach death. Xiongzhong and the other protectors and elders, as well as all the Origin Realm experts from the Tianyuan continent, stared at Gongxi Ming. Their opinion of him underwent a drastic change, and their gazes became filled with admiration and respect. The battlefield sank into a deathly silence. Everyone was stern as they stared at Gongxi Ming. They felt extremely uneasy inside. Gongxi Ming was an elder of the Sacred Spirit Hall. He had reached returnance. His status could not be compared with those saint emperors, yet he actually chose to go down a path of no return right now. His courage and boldness had deeply touched everyone. Jian Chen was solemn. He bowed deeply toward Gongxi Ming, who was wrapped up in flames, and said hoarsely, "I promise you that I will definitely fulfill your final wish if we avert this crisis." As if a great burden had been lifted from him, Gongxi Ming smiled faintly before turning into ashes. The sacrifice of a returnance expert immediately made the primordial god silk shine with even more resplendent light. Vaguely, a layer of flame seemed to roar and burn on its surface. Afterwards, more and more people from the foreign world laid down their lives. Another returnance elder from Ouyang Yongwen's faction chose to sacrifice himself after Gongxi Ming, along with 7 other receival protectors. They all turned into power that would conquer the evil spirit's core. Aside from the 9 Origin Realm experts, thousands of sainthood experts from the foreign world burned their vital energies as well. A layer of white flames coated them, allowing them to shine with the most resplendent light in their lives. They were sent off for the final journey in their lives under the gazes of the various experts. It was a brave and sorrowful scene. The movement infected countless people. All the sainthood and Origin Realm experts from the world of the Tianyuan continent felt deeply shocked. Many of them even cried emotionally. Jian Chen hovered in the air as he looked at the people who laid down their lives one after another with a gaze that trembled slightly. He bowed deeply towards everyone. He was so touched inside that he was rendered speechless. "All of you will be the heroes of our world. Your names will be passed down through the ages and be revered by every generation. Your clans and families will be protected by the Sacred Spirit Hall," the Spirit King proclaimed solemnly. Chapter 1629. Averting the crisis narrowly. All the people on the Tianyuan continent side currently felt deeply touched. They all stared at the people from the foreign world who laid down their lives to overcome the crisis with mixed emotions. Many of them felt admiration. They were enemies before and had fought many battles against each other, resulting in heavy losses. Their battles even caused the continent to crack into 4 pieces, resulting in inestimable damages. Many people among the 4 races held exceedingly deep hatred for the people from the foreign world because they had invaded their lands. They would have been able to avoid everything if these people had not invaded. However, these same people were giving up their lives one after another to save everybody. They burnt their bodies and all their vital essences, paying the price of death to force out every last strand of their bloodline's power. Their actions had deeply touched everyone from the Tianyuan continent's world, causing their hatred towards the foreign world to dull. Unfortunately, only the bloodline of the Forsaken Saints was useful for the primordial god Silk. Otherwise, it would not just be them who would sacrifice themselves. The primordial god Silk shone with a golden glow, much brighter than ever before after receiving the power of the sainthood and origin realm expert's bloodline. The golden light directly transformed into roaring golden flames, flickering with tongues of flames as it burnt away the evil spirit's core. Under the roasting of the golden flames, its so-called indestructible core dispersed faster and faster. In the end, it became smaller and smaller, weaker and weaker. The painful shrieks of the evil spirit rang out from within the core. With Adriana's life force blocking the second half of its power, the power temporarily could not fuse with the evil spirit, preventing it from regaining its peak strength. The primordial god Silk that roared with golden flames trapped its core, so it could not escape. The evil spirit seemed to understand that it was doomed today. It roared and bellowed out in refusal, except its voice became weaker and weaker. It turned less and less audible under the flames from the primordial god Silk. In the end, it completely vanished. The core that was known to be indestructible, to the point where even Jian Chen and the Spirit King could do nothing about it, had finally dispersed under the flames of the primordial god Silk at that moment. Jian Chen, the Spirit King, and the Origin Realm experts in the surroundings all let out a breath of relief when they sensed that the evil presence from the evil spirit had disappeared. Many people smiled from managing to survive. Soon afterwards, more than 80% of the experts from the Tianyuan continent's world bowed towards the Forsaken Saints. They did not bow towards the living experts, but the people who had laid down their lives to avert the crisis of the world. The crisis still isn't over completely. There's still a fragment of its soul that remains, Jian Chen said gruffly. He looked at the sky and the blood-red mist that had basically engulfed the entire place with a demonic red light. It conflicted against the tree of life Adriana conjured with 30% of her life force, except the conflict had become extremely weak now that the core of the evil spirit had vanished. After all, only a fragment of the evil spirit's soul remained in the blood-red cloud. It was just too weak, unable to control the tremendous power at all. Even if the soul fragment possessed supreme power that could even overthrow the universe, it was unable to use it at all. With a thought, the 2 snapped strands of the primordial god Silk shone with blinding light. It soared into the sky like 2 dragons as it burned with golden flames. They directly surged into the sky, entering the tremendous blood-red cloud in a seemingly unstoppable fashion. They planned on wiping out the soul fragment of the evil spirit in the cloud. Jian Chen slowly closed his eyes below. His soul seemed to have fused with the primordial god Silk as he controlled it while weaving through the blood-red clouds. The blood-red clouds would begin to disperse wherever the primordial god Silk went. Every strand of blood-like mist represented the evil spirit's unique evil power. It was extremely powerful, even enough to pose a life-threatening danger to Jian Chen and the Spirit King. However, the primordial god Silk just happened to be effective against this power. Coupled with the fact that the evil spirit's soul fragment was unable to control the power, the primordial god Silk was unstoppable as it moved among the mist. The evil spirit's soul fragment hid carefully in the blood-red cloud, but Jian Chen discovered it very soon. Immediately, he controlled the 2 strands and weaved them together, forming a huge net that covered a huge region. It trapped the evil spirit's soul fragment, and as the net shrank, the soul fragment ran out of places to flee. The soul fragment could only shriek miserably under the attack of the primordial god Silk's power before dispersing. However, Jian Chen did not drop his guard. He continued to control the primordial god Silk so it would travel through the blood-red cloud. He carefully sensed if there were any other traces of the evil spirit because he was uncertain if the fragment he had found earlier was the entire soul fragment that the evil spirit had left behind. If a single fragment slipped through his fingers, it would lead to endless trouble in the future once it matured. The primordial god silk had exhausted its golden flames, so the flames disappeared. Its golden glow gradually dulled as well. As it purified the blood-red cloud, its powers were rapidly consumed as well. Jian Chen searched through the blood-red cloud with the primordial god silk many times, only stopping once the primordial god silk had completely dulled and had less than 10% of its previous power. He believed that it was impossible for a fragment of the evil spirit's soul to evade his senses after such a tight search. After all, he had already purified a third of the blood-red cloud with the primordial god silk. The soul fragment was so weak, so it was impossible for it to hide from his careful search. Below, all the experts from the two worlds raised their heads to look at the sky. They gazed at the blood-red cloud, and some of them looked at Jian Chen from time to time. Their eyes would be filled with admiration and fear, as well as anticipation. All of them knew that there was still a fragment of the evil spirit's soul hiding within the blood-red cloud, and whether it could be destroyed or not would entirely depend on Jian Chen. They would have temporarily evaded the crisis of the world if the soul fragment still remained, but once it matured, the same crisis would happen all over again. At that time, they were unsure if they would have the power to stop it a second time. The Spirit King also sternly stared at the blood-red cloud in the sky. He knew that the core of the evil spirit had been wiped out, but they still had not truly claimed victory at this point. At this moment, the two strands of primordial god silk appeared from within the blood-red cloud, shining with a faint golden luster. The two strands coiled around Jian Chen's wrist. At the same time, Jian Chen slowly opened his eyes. Exhaustion appeared on his face. Have you destroyed the soul fragment left behind by the crisis? The Spirit King arrived before Jian Chen and asked eagerly. Jian Chen exhaled deeply and smiled victoriously. Yes. The final soul fragment of the crisis has been destroyed. Good, good. The sacrifice of so many people from my world was not in vain. It even included a few protectors and elders. The Spirit King smiled freely. Jian Chen did not speak loudly, but he did not try to hide it either. The weakest people present were saint rulers, but even with the distance between them, they clearly heard Jian Chen's words. Immediately, cheers rang out. Many people were filled with joy, but there were also others who sobbed sorrowfully and painfully. They had lasted to the end and survived, but they had lost many of their beloved friends and family in this battle. It was reasonable for them to be filled with grief. This battle was just too horrifying. Not only had many sainthood experts from both worlds fallen, even mortal realm fighters and ordinary people who did not cultivate saint force had died under the devouring powers of the evil spirit. Many cities that possessed populations in the millions or tens of millions became ghost cities. They were filled with lifeless corpses. Chapter 1630. A bold attempt. We've finally achieved victory. I never thought that the crisis of the world would be so terrifying, making us sacrifice so many experts to destroy it. It even included a few Origin Realm experts. Many people among the experts murmured gently. Many more people appeared dazed. Everything that had happened earlier felt like a dream. They had lived for thousands of years or even tens of thousands of years. Many of them had even learnt about matters from millions of years ago from old records. Basically, most of them knew about everything that had happened within the past million years. However, no matter how knowledgeable they were, everything that had happened today had completely overwhelmed their knowledge. A single crisis of the world had caused such great damage to the world of Forsaken Saints and the Tian Yuan continent's world, almost even ending the two worlds altogether. Everyone felt shocked by this. Even though they had successfully survived, every single one of them understood extremely well just how narrow their survival was this time. This battle was destined to be passed down through the ages, written down in the records of various organizations to be remembered for all of eternity. The world of Forsaken Saints' contribution to the battle against the evil spirit had completely surpassed the Tian Yuan continents. Tens of thousands of fighters from that world had died, all of them offering up their lives by burning their vital energies to force out all the power of their bloodline to support the primordial god Silk. They were even reduced to ashes, including the protectors and elders from the sacred spirit hall. As for those who survived, they were all pale-faced and haggard due to the excessive blood loss. Many had collapsed on the ground. It was the same with the Spirit King. He was even weaker than the fighters from his world. Not only was he the one who lost the most essence blood, but he still suffered from the intense backlash of forcefully using the second move of a will that splits the heavens in the battle against the evil spirit. In the end, not only did his vitality weaken, but he even sustained heavy wounds. His injuries were more severe than anyone else on the battlefield. Jian Chen also suffered very heavy injuries and was sometimes even more injured than the Spirit King. However, he possessed the chaotic body. Coupled with the origin energy of Radiant Saint Force, he was basically healing at all times, so his wounds never took a turn for the worse. Instead, he had mostly recovered already. Now that the crisis of the world has been averted, but the evil power caused by the crisis has not completely dispersed. How should we deal with this power? If we leave the power in the sky, it'll make people uneasy, the Spirit King said with a deep voice as he stared at the sky. However, he could not hide his current frailty. Jian Chen looked over as the Spirit King spoke. The blood-red clouds in the sky remained thick like a huge red carpet that blanketed the entire world. It dyed the entire world blood-red, and even the scorching sunlight could not penetrate its shroud. Jian Chen frowned at the sight of this. Even though the primordial god Silk had dispersed a third of the evil spirit's power, whatever remained was still extremely tremendous to Jian Chen and the Spirit King. It completely exceeded their own strength. However, as the evil power was unable to be controlled, the tremendous power posed minimal risk or even no risk at all. However, completely destroying the remaining evil power would not be an easy feat for Jian Chen and the Spirit King. Senior Adriana, can you assist us in completely destroying this evil power left behind by the crisis of the world? Jian Chen sent a request for assistance towards the territory of the elves on the wasteland continent. The power of his primordial god Silk had basically run out, so it would not be realistic for him to try to use the primordial god Silk to purify the evil power. At the same time, many of the fighters from the world of Forsaken Saints would suffer from extremely severe aftereffects from bloodletting so much and replenishing it time and time again. Obviously, he could not use the same method as before. After all, the evil spirit was destroyed now. The remaining evil power did not pose a great threat at all. I can only offer up 30% of my life force to assist you. Right now, only half of that 30% remains, which is not enough to destroy this power. However, I can use that life force to push the evil power into outer space, but I'll need your cooperation to do that. Adriana's voice rang out in Jian Chen's head. Her voice also possessed a certain sense of weakness. Clearly, losing 30% of her life force was a huge loss to her as well. Then I'll be troubling Senior, Jian Chen thanked gratefully. As long as the evil power was pushed into outer space, he would have time to slowly deal with it. I wonder if my chaotic body can absorb this evil power. If I can, this tremendously terrifying power will make my chaotic body. Jian Chen's eyes shone and he immediately became rather interested. Soon afterwards, Jian Chen and the Spirit King worked with Adriana to seal up the evil power with their absolute strength and slowly push it into outer space. By then, only around a tenth of the life force that Adriana had offered up remained. Your injuries are heavy. If you don't deal with them properly, you'll suffer permanent aftereffects in the future. It'll affect your future cultivation. I'll gift my remaining life force to you, so you can heal. Just treat it as an act of kindness from me. However, I'm helpless towards the injuries of your soul. Adriana's voice rang out in the Spirit King's head. Shortly afterwards, her remaining life force turned into a tremendous energy that poured into the Spirit King's body. At that moment, the Spirit King became enveloped in green light. He healed at an unbelievable rate under the green light, and even the weakness in his expression rapidly vanished. In just a few seconds, the Spirit King returned to his state prior to his severe injuries. He healed so quickly that it had completely surpassed Jian Chen's combination of chaotic body and Radiant Saint Force origin energy. After all, this was the life force of a God King. Even though it was not a lot, it was extremely terrifying. It could not be compared with Class 9 Radiant Saint Force origin energy. Thank you, Senior. I, Shen Jian, will never forget your kindness. If I get the chance in the future, I will definitely repay this kindness. The Spirit King clasped his hands in Adriana's direction. Not only had Adriana's gift of life force made him recover from his wounds, but the remaining part had fused with his cultivation, becoming his own power. As a result, his strength advanced by quite a lot once more. If it were not for the limited laws of this world, he could step into godhood at any time. Now that the blood-red cloud that loomed over the world was gone, the radiant sun illuminated the ground once more. Jian Chen entered the cloud of evil power all by himself and attempted to absorb the power to see if he could do so or not. He wanted to refine the evil spirit's power into his own chaotic force. He did not take part in dealing with the aftermath on the Tianyuan continent. There was no need for him to worry about this either. The four races all had their leaders, and even the humans had Yang Lai, Gui Hai Dao, Feng Xiaotian, Houston and so on. Chapter 1631. Refining the cloud. As soon as Jian Chen entered the blood-red cloud, he felt a tremendous pressure crush in from all directions as if mountains were pressed up against him. His body suddenly sank, and his movement speed became greatly affected. At the same time, a presence filled with evilness entered Jian Chen's head, affecting its soul. He felt like he had begun to hallucinate. Jian Chen's eyes narrowed, and the light in his eyes flickered. He concentrated and suppressed the hallucinations that the evil power triggered. Then the twin swords hovered above him and shone with azure and violet light, forming a screen around him. Chaotic force filled every inch of his body at that moment as well, working with the twin swords to keep out the pressure from the cloud. After all, the blood-red cloud had power equivalent to the evil spirit at its peak condition. Even though the powers of the primordial god Silk had purified a third of it, the remaining portion was still far greater than Jian Chen. If the consciousness of the evil spirit were still present, Jian Chen and the Spirit King would not be his opponent even if he could only control the remaining two-thirds of the power. Even though the evil spirit had been destroyed now, the blood-red cloud still pressured Jian Chen to a certain degree. Jian Chen did not approach the center of the cloud. Instead, he stopped in the outskirts after traveling 100 meters in. He sat down there sternly. Even though he knew the evil spirit had been destroyed, Jian Chen still did not dare to be careless in the blood-red cloud because the cloud's power was just too great. It had surpassed deity. He even wondered if gods could control powers as great as the cloud. Jian Chen sat in the blood-red cloud. He sucked in a deep breath and slowly closed his eyes. He began to absorb the power in the cloud carefully. Jian Chen was uncertain whether his chaotic body could absorb this power as it was just too tremendous and possessed an extremely evil presence. He was even less certain whether the power would be detrimental or beneficial to him, so he did not act recklessly at all with the attempt this time. He only absorbed a tiny sliver of the power that was about the size of a needle. Jian Chen's body began to quiver violently when he absorbed the tiny sliver before he could even get to refining it. As soon as the power entered his body, it erupted with an extremely great might like gunpowder. The terrifying shockwaves almost severed all of Jian Chen's meridians. The sliver of power was just too great, to the point where Jian Chen almost failed to endure it with his 8th-layer chaotic body. Not to mention that he had only absorbed a needle-size amount of that power. If he had absorbed more than that in one go, he would become severely injured to the extreme. Jian Chen gritted his teeth and endured the excruciating pain silently. Every time his chaotic body progressed to a new layer, he would have to undergo the pain of refining his body. It would be torturous every time, so the pain from this tiny sliver of power could not be compared to it. It was nothing for Jian Chen to endure such pain. Chaotic force surged within Jian Chen's chaotic Niden. It produced strands of chaotic force as Jian Chen practiced his cultivation method, devoting himself to refining the sliver of power. Even though the power from the cloud was powerful, he was only refining a tiny sliver of it. Jian Chen refined it in just a short while. Jian Chen did not beam in joy at all after refining the sliver of power. Instead, he frowned. He opened his eyes slowly and murmured, "This sliver of energy has actually been refined to nothingness. It has brought me no benefits. Is it impossible to refine the power within the cloud? That's impossible. Chaotic force is a power of the highest level in the entire universe. Aside from Shenhuang Qi, there is no power that can rival chaotic force. Even Yin Qi and Yang Qi originate from chaotic force. Although my chaotic force is nowhere near true chaotic force, it should still exhibit some of the characteristics of true chaotic force. Although the power of the cloud is greater than the 8th-layer chaotic force I possess right now, it's still a power without an owner. Logically speaking, there should be quite a high chance of me successfully absorbing and refining this power." Jian Chen quickly overthrew the thought that the chaotic body was unable to refine the power of the cloud. According to his understanding of chaotic force, it could absorb all energies and powers in the world. It was not classified amongst the 5 elements in the world. Of course, that was given that the power was within the range that his chaotic body could withstand. Jian Chen did not give up and continued to absorb and refine the power of the cloud. He became even more confident that his chaotic body could absorb the power of the cloud after his thoughts earlier. He would never consider such action if the power of the cloud was still under the evil spirit's control, but the power had now become dead, unable to put up any resistance at all. That was enough for the possibility of refining the power for himself. With the progression of every layer, the energy required by the chaotic body would increase by several folds, making it an extremely power-hungry cultivation method. He had reached the 8th layer now, so the number of resources Jian Chen required to reach the 9th layer was simply unimaginable. The Tianyuan continent would never possess enough of what he needed. If the power left behind by the evil spirit could help his chaotic body progress, it would be Jian Chen's fortune, even if it was not enough for him to reach the 9th layer. He could never pass by this opportunity. Jian Chen also failed with his second attempt. The sliver of power he had absorbed was forcefully refined into nothingness within him, leaving nothing behind at all. His chaotic body did not grow either. Jian Chen did not become discouraged and continued. However, his third attempt resulted in failure as well. He failed the 4th time. He failed the 5th time. Finally, after 5 attempts, Jian Chen succeeded. The needle of power he had absorbed had finally been refined into a strand of chaotic force, becoming his own power. I understand now. It's impossible for every strand of the cloud's power to be refined into chaotic force due to its special characteristics. I need to collect the essence, but the difficult part is that the essence can't be found so easily. Jian Chen's eyes shone. As long as he could refine the cloud's power into chaotic force, it was something worth celebrating over, even if it would take a long time. Even though he would fail many times during the refinement of the cloud's power, as long as he could refine a single strand of it, his chaotic force would grow slightly. The increase would not be drastic, but it would be equivalent to years or even decades of absorbing the energy of the world. Chapter 1632. The Push for Territory, 1. Jian Chen went mad afterwards. He completely devoted himself to cultivation. He wanted to increase his strength as much as possible now that a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity had presented itself before him. He paid no attention to the various matters the aftermath of the various battles caused. He sent a single message to his friends and family before entering seclusion, completely sealing himself off in the blood-red cloud. Only after receiving news that Jian Chen had entered seclusion did the people of the 2 worlds begin to disperse. The people who left first were from the 4 races. Some of the severely injured people left first, returning to their clans to heal. However, there were also many fighters who had lost close friends and family who remained. They gazed at the battlefield sorrowfully as they struggled to dispel their pain. They remained there for quite some time. In the blink of an eye, a portion of the people had left. They all originated from the Tianyuan continent's world. The people from the world of Forsaken Saints all remained on the spot. None of them dared to leave without the Spirit King's orders. The Spirit King was the supreme ruler of the world of Forsaken Saints. If that world was an empire, he would be the emperor. They were different from the 4 races on the Tianyuan continent. Although each race possessed their own origin realm experts, they did not restrain the people of their race, granting them more freedom. I never thought Jian Chen would actually choose to enter seclusion at a time like this. Are you really cultivating? Or are you escaping? The Spirit King murmured to himself nonchalantly as he gazed at the blood-red cloud in outer space. Whatever. Since you want to cultivate, then we'll wait until you emerge. I just happen to need some time to heal the wounds of my soul as well, thought the Spirit King. Then he looked away at the people from his world who remained. He said, all of you return. The protectors and elders will remain on the Tianyuan continent to recover. Once you have, cooperate with the Tianyuan continent in dealing with the aftermath. All the experts from the world of Forsaken Saints responded. Then the sainthood experts passed through the tunnel to return to their world. The origin realm experts all stayed behind. They completely understood that the Spirit King had ordered them to stay behind because he was ready to take up some territory in this world. Although Jian Chen was the greatest contributor in averting the crisis of the world, they played a significant role as well. It could even be said that if the experts had not given up their lives willingly, everyone would still face death and defeat in the end even with Jian Chen's presence. Their world had paid such a heavy price to stop the crisis of the world, so they would never drop the matter if the Tianyuan continent did not give them satisfactory compensation. We will record the names of the clansmen who burned their vital essences. Do not miss a single one of them. We will set up a memorial tablet for them in the Sacred Spirit Hall, and their clans and family will receive the protection of the sacred spirit hall, the Spirit King ordered.
Yes, Spirit King.
The Origin Realm experts all responded. Our continent wants a copy of that list as well. Their major contribution to stopping the crisis of the world has filled us with admiration. We want their names and their deeds to be passed down forever. They are worthy of all our respect. Shangguan Mu'er flew over slowly and said solemnly. Without a single doubt, she had become the second sovereign of the humans with her strength at mid-returnance. Anything she said or did would obviously be enough to impact all the humans of the Tianyuan continent, and she was able to make the decision for some matters. The Spirit King looked at Shangguan Mu'er, and the light in his eyes flickered by an undetectable amount. After a moment of silence he said, "You're also a human from the Tianyuan continent, and your strength is only second to Jian Chen. You can represent the Tianyuan continent. Since Jian Chen isn't present right now, why don't you represent your world and come to an agreement with mine?" Shangguan Mu'er was interested. She had no idea what this so-called agreement would entail, and did not even know whether an agreement like this was supposed to exist or not. However, she did understand that the Spirit King wanted territory on this world by using the contributions of his people as a reason. He wanted a safe place for his people. The world of Forsaken Saints obviously possessed a horrible natural environment, to the point where countless people would just die due to the environment alone every year. It was unsuitable for the habitation of weaker cultivators, while the natural environment of the Tianyuan continent was like heaven to the weaker cultivators. As a result, the world of Forsaken Saints did not only attack the Tianyuan continent for a passage to the Saints' world, but so that the weaker people of their race could have a safe place to live. Unfortunately, I will have to disappoint the Spirit King. Although I am a human of the Tianyuan continent, I don't live on the continent. I have always stayed on Three Saint Island, which lies among the oceans. As this matter relates to the agreement between the Tianyuan continent and your world of Forsaken Saints, how can I, an outsider, make the decision? It's best if you wait for Jian Chen to return, said Shangguan Mu'er. The Spirit King frowned and stared deeply at the huge blood-red cloud in outer space once again. He said indifferently, if that's the case, then I'll wait for Jian Chen to emerge. Xiongzhong. I am present. Xiongzhong immediately bowed towards the Spirit King nearby. He was extremely polite. Once you and the others recover, discuss with the representatives of the Tianyuan continent about how the territory will be divided. Come up with a plan first and Jian Chen and I will make the final decision. The Spirit King ordered in a way where Xiongzhong could not decline. Yes, Spirit King, Xiongzhong replied politely. The Spirit King no longer remained after that order. He left as a streak of light, but he did not immediately return to the world of Forsaken Saints. Instead, he went to the territory of the elves first to personally thank Adriana. Only then did he return to the world of Forsaken Saints and work on healing his soul. He had no idea whether he would be fighting with Jian Chen over territory once Jian Chen had emerged. If there really would be a battle, it would be very difficult for him to defeat Jian Chen with his injured soul, so he needed to recover to his peak condition before Jian Chen emerged. He would not back down even in the slightest regarding territory, even if he came from the same world as Jian Chen. Yang Lai, Feng Xiaotian, Gue Hai Yi Dao, and the others all revealed rather ugly expressions when they saw how the Spirit King had ordered his elders and protectors to remain on the Tianyuan continent. All of them arrived by Shangguan Mu'er's side, hoping that she would remain on the continent to watch over them. After all, now that Jian Chen was gone, they felt extremely pressured in the face of so many foreign origin realm experts. On the other side, when the foreign origin realm experts saw how Yang Lai and the others wanted Shangguan Mu'er to watch over the continent, their faces all changed slightly. There was extremely deep fear in their gazes towards Shangguan Mu'er. Don't worry, everyone. I will always keep an eye out for the activity of the Tianyuan continent at all times. If you need me, I will immediately hurry over. Shangguan Mu'er declined their offers to stay. Then she looked towards the crowd and saw Xiao Qian, Xiao Yu, and Shangguan Aojian. A sliver of gentleness finally appeared in her cold eyes when she saw Shangguan Aojian. She said, Xiao Bao, Xiao Qian, Xiao Yu, let's go. Xiao Bao, Xiao Qian, and Xiao Yu took part in the battle as well. Currently, their faces seemed rather weak and exhausted. They immediately flew out from the crowd when they heard Shangguan Mu'er's words. Under the envious and admiring gazes of many, they returned to Three Saint Island with Shangguan Mu'er. At the same time, a very cold gaze landed on Shangguan Aojian's back. It was filled with disdain. This gaze belonged to a young man with a rather striking appearance.
His arrogance was obvious with his face. Even though he appeared to be rather weak, it was still not enough to hide the noble presence he possessed from being born and raised as a part of a large clan. The young man was the young master of the Chongyang clan, Chongyang-su. Close to 20 years had passed, but Chongyang-su seemed exactly the same as before. His appearance and temperament was no different. The only thing that had changed was his strength. Now, he was no longer a great saint master but a saint ruler. Of course, he had only become a saint ruler through the usage of countless precious heavenly resources from the Chongyang clan. As the young master of the Chongyang clan, along with the fact that he was spoilt by the authoritative Chongyang Ba, Chongyang-su was able to use all the resources that the Chongyang clan had to offer without any restraint. He had received the personal guidance from many saint emperors, which was why he managed to reach saint ruler at such a young age. He was different from Shangguan Aojian. Shangguan Aojian always maintained a low profile and never tried to publicize himself. Although there were a few rumors about the young island master of Three Saint Island in recent years, the rumors vanished gradually as he maintained his low profile. On the other hand, Chongyang-su came from a glorious clan and possessed a terrifying background. His status immediately skyrocketed after becoming the young master of the Chongyang clan, drawing the attention of countless people across the continent. Coupled with his great talent for cultivation, his name as the young master of the Chongyang clan gradually spread across the entire world. His fame would be able to rival Jian Chen's one day. This was all because Chongyang-su had not used a violet cloud peach to become a saint ruler. Chongyang-su stared at Shangguan Aojian's back and clenched his fist tightly. He thought, young island master, you'll understand my power soon. You've just consumed a violet cloud peach from my uncle, that's all. Do you really think you can beat me with just that? Now that my uncle has returned, I'll have a violet cloud peach for myself very soon as well, and it'll be of the highest grade. I'll personally go to Three Saint Island to challenge you after I consume it. I will flatten you below my feet. I'll let you understand that the only reason why I was defeated by you all those years ago was because I had yet to consume a violet cloud peach as well. Chongyang-su felt plenty of resentment towards Shangguan Aojian. Only he knew that he had always been stifled by the young island master who was similar in age to him, despite how glorious he appeared to be before others. In the past years, he had challenged the young island master more than once, but every time, he would suffer a terrible defeat. Even after becoming a saint ruler, he still could not withstand a single punch from the young island master. Chapter 1633, The Push for Territory, 2. With Shangguan Muir's departure, the experts from the Sea Race and the 100 Races all left the Tianyuan continent with the Sea Goddess and Tai Ta. They returned to their territories to recover strength. The battle earlier was fierce and close. Although they had achieved victory in the end, all the Origin Realm experts from both worlds were greatly exhausted. The elders and protectors from the world of Forsaken Saints were affected in particular. They had pushed their bodies beyond their limits to produce blood, so they had exhausted themselves far more than the Origin Realm experts from the world of the Tianyuan continent. Although the Sea Goddess and Tai Ta left the Tianyuan continent and had returned to their respective territories, they were the same as Shangguan Muir, watching over the situation on the continent carefully from a very long distance away. They remained cautious against the elders and protectors from the world of Forsaken Saints. The White Tiger did not return to the Beast God continent with the magical beasts. Instead, he remained on the Tianyuan continent, returning to Flame City with Xiao Jin and Xiao Ling. They stayed in Flame City. Although he was the god and sovereign of the magical beasts, the White Tiger felt nothing towards the Beast God continent, let alone any sense of belonging. Instead, Flame City was Jian Chen's city, so he felt a greater sense of belonging by staying there. With so many Origin Realm experts remaining on the Tianyuan continent when Jian Chen was not present, the entire continent felt tremendous pressure. The Tianyuan continent just happened to need the presence of more Origin Realm experts from their own world, so having the White Tiger, Xiao Jin, and Xiao Ling personally remain in Flame City had increased the city's status. Song Qiong obviously handled the matters on the Beast God continent's end. He was experienced, so it was obviously a piece of cake for him to manage these affairs. Although the White Tiger possessed strength at the Origin Realm, it had no experience in leadership at all. After all, it was still young and had not gone through all the aspects of life yet. Although Xiao Ling was the barrier spirit of Mercenary City and had protected the place quietly for the past million years, Mercenary City was now destroyed, along with the seal deep beneath the city that she guarded. She no longer had orders to carry out,
so she was no longer restrained to any particular place or activity. Coupled with the fact that Xiao Ling was not close to anyone aside from Jian Chen in the current world, she would obviously settle down in Flame City. Perhaps even Xiao Ling herself had not realized it, but she had already begun to treat Flame City as her own home because her older brother Jian Chen built this city. She felt a sense of closeness by staying there. Ada, Air, Asen, and ACI currently supported each other as they stood on the cracked earth. They all gazed towards the blood-red cloud in outer space. The four of them had all broken through to the origin realm thanks to the 4 strands of sword qi hidden in Jian Chen's arm during the fight against the evil spirit. Then they stood in a sword formation and erupted with a devastating blow that heavily injured the evil spirit. As the formation was just too powerful, they suffered an intense backlash after using it with their strength at the origin realm. As a result, the 4 of them had even temporarily lost the ability to levitate. They stood on the ground like ordinary people. However, no one would ever underestimate the 4 of them. Even though everyone could sense just how weak they had become, they had still reached the origin realm after all. They had become people who could reign supreme. Their status was no longer the same as the past. Congratulations on your breakthroughs to the origin realm. Although the battle has ended now, a threat still exists. Please come to the Supreme Divine Hall of Mercenary City to heal. We will provide you with the best medicine so that you can make a full recovery as soon as possible. Yang Lai, Feng Xiaotian, and Gue Hai Yi Dao arrived before the 4 brothers and invited them. The 3 of them could already tell that the 4 brothers were the most injured people among the Origin Realm experts. They would even struggle to display their strength at the Origin Realm with their current conditions. It was to the point where even Saint Emperors were enough to threaten them. Moreover, there were many Origin Realm experts from the world of Forsaken Saints present on the Tian Yuan continent, so they would pose an extremely great threat to them. As a result, for their safety, Yang Lai, Gue Hai Yi Dao, and Feng Xiaotian had invited the 4 brothers to the Supreme Divine Hall in Mercenary City. In the current world, there was probably no place safer than the Supreme Divine Hall of Mercenary City apart from 3 Saint Island. Even Flame City was not safer. Although the island mistress of the 3 Saint Islands always observed the Tian Yuan continent closely, the 4 brothers were just too weak. If people from the world of Forsaken Saints decided to lay their hands on the 4 brothers at this time, probably even the island mistress would not necessarily be able to make it in time. Ada shook his head. We may be heavily injured, but we're not as miserable as we seem on the surface. We still have some power to protect ourselves. Farewell. Ada's voice was weak, but there was also great determination in his voice. The 4 brothers left. They supported each other as they flew through the sky towards the distance as if they could fall at any time. Yang Lai, Feng Xiaotian, and Gue Hai Yi Dao remained standing on the spot as they watched the 4 brothers leave. They found it rather regretful that they had failed to get the 4 brothers to stay and protect the Tian Yuan continent. At the same time, they felt some worry. They worried that once the 4 brothers had traveled some distance, the Origin Realm experts of the foreign world would take advantage of them since they were weakened. However, the 4 brothers insisted on leaving, so they could not help them out even when they wanted to. Jian Chen was no longer present on the current Tian Yuan continent and Shangguan Mu'er had returned to 3 Saint Island. They would not be able to put up a fight at all against the elders and protectors from the world of Forsaken Saints with their remaining Origin Realm experts. In fact, they even felt extremely fortunate that the elders and protectors did not try to lay their hands on them. Eldest brother, that tiny tower Jian Chen held. After leaving, ACI looked at Ada and said carefully through a communication technique. His gaze seemed slightly dazed. Ada raised his head once more to look at the blood-red cloud in outer space. He said to the 3 others through a communication technique as well, "It's rather unimaginable that the 4 of us were able to break through to the Origin Realm. That foreign power clearly doesn't belong to us, yet it seems to come from the same origins as us, making it feel like it originally belonged to us. At the same time, we learnt a few new sword formations and sword techniques, and their origins are all mysterious as well. We clearly didn't know them before, but when we used it, it was like we had used them before. Aside from that, the tiny tower in Jian Chen's hand made me feel a sense of familiarity for some reason as well. I feel like everything that happened to us this time is connected to Jian Chen. We have to go through Jian Chen to find the answer to this and settle all our doubts. However, Jian Chen has gone into seclusion within the evil power. We can't see him even if we want to, so let's find a place to heal first." Chapter 1634. The Push for Territory, 3. Let's go with what eldest brother said. Let's find a place to go into seclusion and recover. I've also gained some foreign information in my head after breaking through and need some time to digest it. All the Origin Realm experts from the world of Forsaken Saints gathered together. None of them had left. All the Origin Realm experts from the world of the Tianyuan continent were cautious of them at all time, and they were no different. They were cautious about Shangguan Mu'er attacking them secretly at all times. All of them had personally experienced Shangguan Mu'er's immense power on the tip of the world mountains. They were in their peak conditions back then and possessed 2 early reciprocity experts by their sides, but they only managed to become locked in a stalemate against her. Now that Ouyang Yongwen was gone and a few of the elders and protectors were dead, their strength had decreased drastically. If Shangguan Mu'er attacked them at a time like this, they had no doubt that she would be able to heavily injure all of them with ease. All of them felt like they were skating on thin ice by staying on the Tianyuan continent with the hidden threat of Shangguan Mu'er. They would be doomed if they were just slightly careless. Let's go as well. We cannot become separated during this time at all to prevent unforeseen accidents. I'll take care of the god-slaying formation. As soon as Shangguan Mu'er comes for us, we can use it against her, Xiongzhong said to the elders and protectors behind him through a communication technique. He was stern. The elders and protectors nodded sternly as well. Now that the Spirit King was gone, they felt a strong sense of danger. Although they knew that both Jian Chen and Shangguan Mu'er would never lay their hands on them with their contributions to averting the crisis, they could not help but remain wary. The thought of attacking and killing a few Origin Realm experts of the Tianyuan continent had crossed their minds as it would benefit them during the upcoming discussion. However, they dismissed it without any hesitation as soon as they thought of the idea. The Origin Realm experts in this world would pose no threat towards them. If Shangguan Mu'er did not exist, they really might have considered doing something like that. The Spirit King could obviously handle Jian Chen. However, Shangguan Mu'er's existence prevented them from acting recklessly in this world. Some of them had even begun to believe that in the next few days, they would be extremely fortunate if Shangguan Mu'er did not decide to attack them. The aftermath was dealt with in an orderly fashion, while the ruined continent gradually recovered its peace. The various organizations and experts on the Tianyuan continent all went quiet with the peace after the battle as well. They had participated in the battle against the foreign world, and then they had taken part in the battle against the crisis of the world. They had been heavily injured long ago. Even the 10 protector clans that had existed for 1,000,000 years on the Tianyuan continent gradually began to decline. Along with the losses from battle, the balance of the Tianyuan continent changed as well. The 10 protectors' clans had all declined to a state that was never seen before. Aside from the Chongyang clan, Pure Heart Pavilion, and Tyrant Blade School that remained influential, the 7 other protector clans had almost died out completely. They had lost all their saint kings and saint emperors. A protector clan without any of them was not even as great as a few ancient clans. Some of the more powerful ancient clans even showed signs of replacing these weakened clans as protector clans. The peaceful continent had basically returned to the age where saint ruler and saint kings hid from view. The crisis of the world had been averted, and the problems the Yin-Yang Saint Rock caused had been completely resolved. Without the effects of the rock, the laws of the world gradually approached completion, making cultivation even easier than the past. Even the origin energy that had disappeared for countless years began to appear again, making it much easier for cultivators to break through among sainthood. It even gave saint emperors the hope of reaching the origin realm. As a result, many sainthood experts chose to enter seclusion at this time. As they recovered their strength, they attempted to increase their absolute powers as well. The only thing that remained the same was the weaker mortal realm cultivators. For survival, or for cultivation resources and methods, they continued to throw themselves at magical beasts or other humans. They fought hard and devoted themselves just for a better tomorrow. In the blink of an eye, 3 years passed by peacefully. Huge stone tablets were erected in many cities across the continent. A mysterious power protected every single tablet, making them so tough that even saint emperors were unable to destroy them. Various foreign names were carved on one side of the tablets, while the other side explained that the sacrifice the owners of the names had undergone to stop the crisis of the world. Their bravery inspired the admiration of many. In those 3 years, rainbow clouds constantly blanketed the skies above the Tianyuan continent, Beast God continent, and Wasteland continent. Many people broke through during that time, either to Saint Ruler, Saint King, or Saint Emperor. However, there were still no people who stepped into the origin realm. Due to the sea goddess barrier, Rainbow clouds did not appear in the depths of the sea, in the sea realm. However, there were still a lot of people who broke through. The world gradually recovered from the losses of the battles. With the departure of the ice goddess Hall, the coldness of the Arctic tundra rapidly dissipated, becoming a harmless world of ice and snow. A golden divine hall stood in the depths of that tundra. The divine hall seemed to be wholly made from gold and glistened in the sun. It was eye-catching in the snow-white world. All the elders and protectors gathered in the divine hall under Xueqi's lead. In the past year, apart from sending a protector to assist the Tianyuan continent in tidying up the aftermath, they all remained there recovering. They did not take a single step outside the divine hall, let alone roam the Tianyuan continent. Shangguan remained on their minds. She was like a sharp sword that hovered over their heads at all times. They had no idea when this sword would fall. Their fear for Shangguan had driven them far away from the Tianyuan continent and to the tundra to recover their strength. Chapter 1635. The Push for Territory. 4. After a year of rest, we've recovered to our peak condition. It's time for us to complete the orders that the Spirit King left us. As the only expert at reciprocity among the elders and protectors, he sat on the throne as he gazed at the elders and protectors below sternly. Although there's Shangguan on the Tianyuan continent who strikes fear in us all, I wonder if she'll interfere with the discussions with the Tianyuan continent this time. However, be careful, everyone. The sacrifice of our many clansmen is directly responsible for averting the crisis of the world. At the same time, these are orders that the Spirit King personally passed down, so even if Shangguan plans to interfere, we cannot back down at all, or get in the way of our world's interest. We've paid up enough for this world, so it's time for us to get something back. Let's set off. Xueqi said with a heavy voice. He waved his hand and all the protectors and elders left the divine hall, heading directly for the Tianyuan continent. There was an extremely ordinary village near the Cross Mountains on the Tianyuan continent. Some villagers lived there, surviving off subsistence farming. Although some of the younger people cultivated Saint Force, they were not very strong. They could only handle a few low-class magical beasts. An old man in coarse clothes currently swung a hoe in the fields. Dirt covered his hands as he bent over, carefully planting the seedlings of various vegetables. His old eyes were deep from witnessing the many matters in life. Houston, the people from the foreign world have come. Please come to Flame City immediately. At this moment, a voice rang out from very far away, booming in the old man's mind. The old man's face remained the same. After planting the seedling in his hand, he brushed off the soil on his hands and disappeared in the next moment. Only the simple metal hoe remained in the ground. 4 old men sat on a huge rock, facing each other on a lone island in the vast ocean. They were discussing something. Eldest brother, my comprehension towards the Nirvanic sword formation has reached a new level. Aside from that, I've completely grasped 3 of the sword techniques that suddenly appeared in my mind after breaking through. I can't use the other ones because my strength is insufficient. Although my cultivation has not increased at all, my battle prowess is on a whole new level compared to a year ago. I feel that even by myself no one is my opponent among early receival if I use the sword techniques, ACI said. He was unable to contain his excitement. Ada nodded. In the past year, ACI was not the only one who had made plenty of progress. The 3 other brothers were the same, benefiting greatly. It's just a pity that Jian Chen is still in seclusion. I wonder when he'll emerge. Looks like we'll have to postpone finding him to resolve our queries indefinitely. Ada stared at the sky and sighed gently. Ada, Air, Asen, and ACI, the people from the foreign world have arrived. Please come to Flame City immediately. At this moment, the same voice rang out in the minds of the 4 brothers, making their eyes narrow. After a moment of silence, ACI looked at Ada. He said, Eldest brother, do we go? We live in this world. This world is our home, so how can we not go? Ada said righteously before standing up on the rock. He left together with his brothers. At the same time, the sea goddess in the sea realm and the war god on the wasteland continent received the message from the Tianyuan continent as well. At that moment, all the origin realm experts in that world were mobilized simultaneously, and they all hurried towards the Tianyuan continent. Just as Tai Ta was about to venture to the Tianyuan continent, he suddenly stopped. After a moment of hesitance, he changed his direction and traveled towards the elves. The war god's arrival alerted all of the elves. They all went up to welcome him politely. In the end, Tai Ta entered the forbidden grounds of the elves under the Elven Queen's lead. "Stay outside and wait for me," Tai Ta said to the Elven Queen with his deep, soft voice. "Yes, sir." The Elven Queen replied politely and remained outside in an obedient manner. Tai Ta stood quietly before the Elven God tree in golden robes, which made him seem awe-inspiring. His eyes shone as he carefully observed the tree of life that had existed for a very long time. At this moment, a strand of green life force condensed into an illusionary figure before the Elven God tree. As her figure was just too blurry, her appearance was completely obscured. Only the fact that she was female was evident. Adriana of the God clan greets the great war god. The illusionary woman dropped her knees to the ground and buried her head deeply towards the ground. She greeted Tai Ta by kneeling and bowing. She was extremely courteous. Tai Ta stood there as his golden robes ruffled gently in the breeze. He stared at the kneeling woman and asked, "Who are you?" Tai Ta already knew that the Elven God tree was extraordinary, but his understanding towards it was not as great as Jian Chen's or the Spirit King's. At the very least, he still did not know Adriana's true identity, or that she had descended as a mighty god king just for him, the war god. Adriana hid nothing, telling him everything about her identity and origins. She immediately dumbfounded Tai Ta. "You're actually a god king? And the greatest god king of the god clan? Are you sure you're not trying to trick me?" Tai Ta asked in disbelief. Just the Spirit King, who barely possessed the battle prowess of a deity, had pressured the Tianyuan continent so much. God kings would be insurmountable existences. Tai Ta found it unrealistic that a powerful god king would actually kneel towards him right now. "I have told the complete truth. I will never lie to the great war god." Adriana's forehead was basically stuck to the ground. Her respect came from the bottom of her heart and could not be faked. Tai Ta sucked in a deep breath and asked, "Why didn't I see you when I came here in the past? You didn't even say a single word to me. And why did you call for me earlier?" "The time was not ripe in the past, so I did not greet the war god. Please forgive me. I've requested an audience with the war god this time because of the spirit sages," said Adriana. "The spirit sages?" Tai Ta asked doubtfully. "The spirit sages are the people from the world of forsaken saints. Although I don't know how they've appeared here, they are the remnants of the spirits world and a large clan and race in the saints world. Although they've declined now, they still possess quite the heritage. I learnt that the war god is going to the Tianyuan continent this time to negotiate with the spirit sages about territory, which was why I wanted to see the war god and beg him to pull the spirit sages to your side. It will be of great help to our god clan in the future," said Adriana. The busy city lord's estate in Mercenary City was now empty. Only the elite of the elite stood guard outside. Although the estate had the fewest guards it had ever seen, the power gathered there was the greatest in all of history. Using the city lord's estate of Flame City as a temporary place for negotiations was the agreement Yang Lai, Gue Hai Yi Dao, Feng Xiaotian, Houston, the sea goddess, and so on came to. Not only did they want to ensure their safety during the negotiations this time, but they wanted to strike fear in the origin realm experts from the foreign world during the process as well. There were only 3 places in the world that could fulfill the 2 conditions in the current world. The first was the Supreme Divine Hall of Mercenary City, the next was 3 Saint Island, and the last place was Flame City. The Supreme Divine Hall of Mercenary City was a treasure with extremely great defensive capabilities. If they were to hold the negotiations there, the origin realm experts from the world of Forsaken Saints would not be allowed to enter. As for 3 Saint Island, Yang Lai and the others had no confidence in persuading Shangguan Muir, so they could only set Flame City as the location. After all, the city's background was exceedingly shocking even though it only appeared to be an ordinary city in the eyes of the origin realm experts. Jian Chen personally founded it, and Jian Chen was its city lord. The city lord's estate was Jian Chen's estate in name. Coupled with Jian Chen's current strength, Flame City was no longer so ordinary. Even when the origin realm experts of the foreign world entered there, they needed to be obedient and could not act recklessly. Chapter 1636. The Push for Territory, 5. With Xiongzhong at the lead, close to 20 origin realm experts from the foreign world gathered in the city lord's estate. Only a portion of the people that had remained in this world came to city lord's estate of Flame City for negotiations. There were around a dozen more origin realm experts that remained outside the estate. If the negotiations went south, and they began fighting, these people could provide support. Yang Lai, Feng Xiaotian, Gue Hai Yi Dao, Houston, Xiao Jin, Xiao Ling, the White Tiger, Tai Ta, the Sea Goddess, and the four brothers had all arrived for the Tianyuan continent side. Aside from Jian Chen and Shangguan Mu'er, all the Origin Realm experts among the four races had gathered here. Everyone understood that the world of Forsaken Saints did not only want a part of the Tianyuan continent's territory. They wanted territories from the three other races as well, so representatives of the 100 races, magical beasts, and sea race were all present for negotiations. Even when ignoring the fact that just some territory on the Tianyuan continent would not be enough to satiate the tremendous population in the world of Forsaken Saints, the humans on the Tianyuan continent would find it unfair if only they had to give up territory, while the other three races got to keep all of theirs. As a result, the matter of all the races handing over some territory was something that they had come to an agreement about much earlier on. However, they still needed to undergo further negotiations regarding the exact amount of land. They did not give up this territory because of the strength of world of Forsaken Saints. Instead, they made this choice because of the major contributions these people had towards averting the crisis of the world. Only the sacrifice of several tens of thousands of sainthood experts and a few Origin Realm experts had filled Jian Chen's primordial god Silk with enough power to avert the crisis and save everyone else in the world. The Origin Realm experts of both worlds sat opposite each other in the City Lord's estate. They were all stern. Hatred had been accumulated due to the invasion of the world of Forsaken Saints in the past, so the two sides did not say too much to each other when meeting this time. The atmosphere in the estate became rather suffocating. Xiongzhong glanced across the Origin Realm experts that represented the Tianyuan continent's world. When he discovered that Shangguan Mu'er was not present, he could not help but feel relieved. After a moment of deliberation, he spoke first. "May I ask if all your people have arrived? Can we start the negotiations?" Aside from Xiao Jin and Xiao Ling, who observed the foreign experts in interest, the other people all glanced at each other seriously. The status of Origin Realm experts in the Tianyuan continent's world was rather different from the Origin Realm experts from the world of Forsaken Saints. The entire foreign world seemed like a tremendous empire, while the Spirit King was their emperor and absolute ruler. The other Origin Realm experts were elders or protectors. If the Spirit King was not present, Xiongzhong, the only other person who had reached reciprocity, would become their leader. On the other hand, all the Origin Realm experts were revered among the four races. Even though the difference in their strength was drastic, they all shared similar statuses. None of them had the authority to order the others around. As a result, the first to answer Xiongzhong's question would hold a special type of significance. In the negotiations between the two worlds, the representative would naturally speak out first. Gradually, more and more gazes gathered on Tai Ta. As Shangguan Mu'er was not present, Tai Ta obviously became the most powerful person among them, so having him talk would be more suitable. Tai Ta discovered everyone's intentions and just closed his eyes, showing his intentions to everyone else. He understood extremely well that his talents lay in battle and not negotiations. It's a pity that Shangguan Mu'er isn't present. Houston, we'll let you take up the role as the representative for now. Does anyone have any objections? The Sea Goddess asked everyone through a communication technique. She directly named the old man in coarse clothes, who still had some soil on his hands, as their representative. Houston's strength was extraordinary, and he had experience in leadership. The Blood Sword sect had once shaken up the continent under his lead, so he was a resourceful person. Everyone clearly had no objections to having Houston represent them for now. If it was scheming, there would be no one present who could defeat Houston. It was just that Houston had retired in the past 1,000 years and hid away his edge, keeping an extremely low profile. They all believed that he would pour his efforts towards this world's interest if he represented them. After all, the amount of land the world of Forsaken Saints required could only be settled through negotiations. Houston nodded gently. At that moment, his dark and turbid eyes brightened. There seemed to be a flash of sharp light, and he said to Xiongzhong, "If it weren't for the crisis of the world, we would have gone to a battle to the death seeing how your world wants to take our land. It would be very difficult to say who would be the final victor. After all, your Spirit King is no longer invincible." Xiongzhong and the elders and protectors frowned when they heard his words. They became slightly displeased, but they were unable to rebuke Houston for the time being as he was speaking the truth.
The reason why we are all seated here today is due to the major contributions tens of thousands of your people have made to help avert the crisis of the world. Their sacrifice has earned our admiration, which is also why the 4 races of our world are willing to give some territory to your world. However, it won't be much, so please prepare yourselves, said Houston. This is a map that we've prepared. We've marked the land that we want on there, so please have a look. If you have no objections, we can reach an agreement as soon as possible, Xueqi said nonchalantly before taking out several plans he had prepared beforehand. He controlled these plans, floating them gently before the Origin Realm experts of the 4 races. When the Origin Realm experts unfurled the plans, they all frowned aside from Tai Ta, Xiao Jin, Xiao Ling, and the 4 brothers. Xueqi had actually requested for half of the territory that each race possessed. What a coincidence. We just happen to have prepared plans as well, which has the land that we are willing to gift your world marked on it. Please have a look as well, said Houston before passing a plan to Xueqi. They had prepared many versions of the plan, and each version was only created after reaching an agreement with all the Origin Realm experts of the 4 races. The land divided on the plan was different in each version as well. Chapter 1637. Hopes of reaching the 9th layer. Xueqi accepted the plan and unfurled it slowly. The plan was inscribed on the hide of a high-class magical beast, clearly depicting all the geographical features. This included all the land that the 4 races inhabited. As expected, there were a few red circles in a few places on the map, and every circle would take up a tiny part of the 4 races' land. Xueqi immediately frowned when he saw the tiny red circles. His expression became rather ugly. Then he passed it to the elders and protectors around him for them to have a look as well. Without any exceptions, all of the people who saw the plan frowned in displeasure. The contribution of our world to averting the crisis is only second to your sovereign, Jian Chen. It's even enough to rival his contributions. After all, if it were not for the tens of thousands of sacrifices from our people, you would have nothing and end up all dead even with Jian Chen's presence. We saved your world and the countless lives of your world. With such contributions, you're not even willing to give us a little land? Aren't you going overboard? Xueqi said gruffly. He understood inside that the Tianyuan continent no longer feared their world of forsaken saints. Under such circumstances, the only method to gain some territory besides war was negotiations. They only needed to hold negotiations once. After they consented, it would be very difficult to change the agreement. As a result, Xueqi and all the elders and protectors stationed in this world had made up their minds about this negotiation. They needed to push for as many benefits as they could for their own world given that they maintained peace, as this would have a significant effect on their world's future. Houston coughed gently in response to Xueqi. He said, "Indeed, your world has made major contributions to averting the crisis, but there's one thing that you're wrong about. The crisis of the world doesn't only affect our world but your world of forsaken saints as well. Our world functioned as the front line, so once our world gave way, your world could not escape either. Our 2 worlds basically shared the same fate. If one survived, so did the other, but if one fell, so would the other. As a result, I hope you don't think that you're heroes that saved our world because you were saving your own world as well," Houston said steadily. The protectors and elders all became rather ugly when they heard his words. Houston's explanation seemed to have stripped them of all their achievements against the crisis of the world. Before the people from the foreign world could say anything in response, Houston continued, "In reality, it doesn't matter what kind of contribution your world has towards eliminating the crisis of the world. There's no need at all for us to give you any of our land because Jian Chen was the leading figure in stopping the crisis. If it were not for his treasure, you wouldn't have been able to avoid the fate of being devoured even with your slightly special bloodline. The reason why we agreed to give you some land was just to complete the final wishes of the people who laid down their lives so that they can rest easy in the afterlife." The 2 sides argued intensely over the matter of land. Both of them stated their reasons and no one gave in. Fortunately, both sides felt some fear for each other, which was why everyone purposefully controlled themselves despite the intense discussion. They did not end up fighting. The Tianyuan continent side feared the number of Origin Realm experts the foreign world possessed, as well as Xueqi who had reached reciprocity. The protectors and elders from the world of forsaken saints feared Shangguan Mu'er. Although she was not present and 3 Saint Island was extremely far away from Flame City, her strength had reached the point that traversing such a distance would only take a single step. Very soon, the first day of negotiations came to a close.
Neither side made any progress. The side of the Tian Yuan content wanted to cling on to whatever territory they could, refusing to budge even if it was just slightly more than what they had initially proposed. Meanwhile, the protectors and elders from the world of forsaken saints wanted enough land that would make them satisfied at the very least. So the two sides were obviously unable to come to an agreement. The Arctic tundra in the north did not belong to the Tian Yuan continent, and it was distant from Three Saint Island. A golden divine hall currently stood there silently, and all the protectors and elders from the world of forsaken saints had gathered in there. This world is going too far. We've made such great contributions to stopping the crisis, yet they've described it as nothing. Even for territory, they're only willing to let up that tiny portion. It's far from enough considering how large our population is, a protector said furiously. Everyone in the hall fell silent. Their expressions were all very ugly. After the negotiations from the first day, they all understood the Tian Yuan continent's attitude towards the matter. It would clearly be difficult for them to obtain a substantial amount of land. It's a pity that the Spirit King isn't here, which was why we were so hesitant during the negotiations and afraid of offending this world by going too far. Even if we ignore Shangguan Mu'er who is spying on us secretly, there's the even more terrifying Jian Chen above our heads. He's no weaker than the Spirit King, so if he just happens to break through, an elder said grimly. His face became rather pale as he reached the end of those words. Xiongzhong sighed gently, that's true. Jian Chen is in secluded cultivation, but who knows when he'll emerge. If he does actually break through and decides to turn on us, none of us will be able to make it back to our world alive. Let's postpone the negotiations for now and wait until the Spirit King returns. The Origin Realm experts of the four races remained in Flame City. After the first day of negotiations, they gathered together once again, except for Xiao Jin, Xiao Ling, and the four brothers, who did not care about the matter regarding land at all. They left as soon as the negotiations had concluded. The world of forsaken saints has quite the appetite. The land they want is just too much. How can we let up so much land so easily? After all, they're not a part of our world, Gui Hai Yi Dao said gruffly. The negotiations regarding territory cannot be concluded in just a day or two. In my opinion, we should let the matter be for now. Once Jian Chen emerges from seclusion, let's ask for his opinion. After all, if it were not for the fact that Jian Chen has the strength to keep the Spirit King at bay, we would not even have the right to negotiate, said the sea goddess. All right, let's postpone the matter for now. We'll wait for my great-grandson to emerge. After all, he has the most authority among all of us, Yang Lai chuckled. Whenever his great-grandson was mentioned, he would be unable to contain his pride. Yang Lai, you're acting like we don't know that Jian Chen is your descendant. Don't get too cocky, Gui Hai Yi Dao cursed jokingly. He too envied Yang Lai as he had such an impressive descendant. A huge blood-red cloud remained in outer space without moving at all. Jian Chen sat with his legs crossed inside as the essence of the cloud's power gathered from all directions, permeating Jian Chen's surroundings in the form of a red mist that was even darker in color. It entered his body through his pores and breath. After entering Jian Chen's body, the red mist was rapidly converted into chaotic force. Jian Chen was clearly much faster at refining the power than before. Jian Chen's chaotic Niden was no longer as small as when he had just broken through to the 8th layer. As he rapidly absorbed the cloud's power, it grew slowly. Even though its growth was extremely gradual, any progress he made meant that he was even closer to reaching the 9th layer of the chaotic body. There might be hopes of me reaching the 9th layer of the chaotic body here. When I broke through to the 8th layer, my cultivation directly went from receival to early reciprocity, completely skipping past returnance. If my chaotic body reaches the 9th layer, I wonder what my cultivation will reach. Will it be peak reciprocity or will I directly reach godhood? Jian Chen thought as he was filled with anticipation. The 8th layer of the chaotic body bestowed the battle prowess of godhood on him, but that was only battle prowess. His personal level of cultivation remained at early reciprocity. However, if his cultivation level also progressed to godhood, just what level would his battle prowess reach? Whatever. I'll let the matter of territory negotiations between the two worlds be for now. I'll devote myself to increasing my strength here. Once I absorb all the essence of the cloud, or when my chaotic body reaches the 9th layer, I'll emerge from seclusion. The two sides currently fear each other anyway, and with Shangguan Mu'er watching over them, there's no need for me to worry, Jian Chen thought. Although he was cultivating here, he still paid attention to the Tianyuan continent at all times. He only needed to expand his soul, and he would envelop the entire planet. He was extremely clear of what had happened during the negotiations. His soul had even extended into the Golden Divine Hall on the Arctic tundra, and he had clearly heard the words of Xiongzhong and the others. Chapter 1638. The Spirit King arrives. The negotiations between the Tianyuan continent and the world of Forsaken Saints would be held every 10 to 15 days. However, since they never reached an agreement, they would always end up leaving with a bad taste in their mouths. As the place where the two worlds held the negotiations, Flame City's fame boomed once more, skyrocketing to a point where not only did everyone on the Tianyuan continent know about it, its name had even spread across the vast expanse of the world of Forsaken Saints. The Origin Realm experts that belonged on the side of the Tianyuan continent had chosen Flame City because they feared the Origin Realm experts of the other world. They planned on using the prestige of the city to deter the Origin Realm experts from laying their hands on them during the negotiations. After all, even damaging a tiny portion of the city would be akin to directly offending Jian Chen. At the same time, this precaution indirectly elevated the position of the Flame City. By now, there was no organization across the world that could rival its prestige, even though it was nowhere as expansive as the 7 capital cities of the continent. The current Flame City had reached the level of the Sacred Spirit Hall in the world of Forsaken Saints. It had reached a point where it could no longer be replaced. The Heavenly Enchantress sat on a large grey rock on the top of Three Saint Island, exuding an otherworldly beauty. A simple zither was placed before her. As her slender fingers slowly swept across the strings, she played an enchanting music. The music seemed to have fused with nature, carrying a certain airiness. It could calm people and make them be at ease. The music rang through Three Saint Island, causing all the fishermen who lived on the island to seem enchanted. Large fish had even begun to float to the surface of the ocean as if the music enchanted them as well. A handsome young man sat next to the Heavenly Enchantress. The music did not affect him at all. He cast his gaze out towards the horizon, towards the distant Tianyuan continent. At the same time, he would look at the sky often. The young man could vaguely see a small red cloud at the edge of the blue sky. The red speck was only visible to those who possessed extraordinary visual senses. The music stopped after a while and Shangguan Mu'er put the zither away. She gazed into outer space with her enchanting eyes and murmured, "The evil power has weakened slightly. Your father should be absorbing the power in there, but by the looks of things, he'll need quite some time before he fully absorbs it all." The handsome young man looked at the Heavenly Enchantress when he heard her words and said with some worry, "Mother, the power is so great and evil. Will father harm himself by absorbing it?" Shangguan Mu'er fell silent in thought for a while before responding, "Your father's cultivation method is as special as yours, so you can't treat it like anything else. At the same time, he always knows what he's doing, so if he's daring enough to absorb it, he'll definitely have full confidence." "I don't have to worry then," the young man immediately became relieved. As expected, he was Shangguan Aojian. After a moment of silence, Shangguan Aojian said, "Mother, the Tianyuan continent is currently negotiating with the world of Forsaken Saints. The difference between the Origin Realm experts of our world and theirs is very great, so we might show weakness during the negotiations. This is the exact time when they need you, Mother, so why don't you go to the Tianyuan continent to watch over matters?" Shangguan Aojian hoped his mother could go to the Tianyuan continent very much as he had grown attached to the continent during his journeys there. He obviously did not wish for the Tianyuan continent to suffer too much during the negotiations. At the same time, the Tianyuan continent was his father's homeland. Shangguan Mu'er looked at Shangguan Aojian, and her eyes warmed up. She said, "Xiaobao, I understand that you worry for the Tianyuan continent, but there's really no need. Even if you ignore the fact that our side hasn't shown any weakness at all, it's impossible for the negotiations to conclude so soon. No matter what they end up negotiating, the decision will be personally made by the Spirit King and your father in the end. If your father refuses to agree, it doesn't matter how much advantage the world of Forsaken Saints manages to gain through the negotiations. Do you understand?" "I see. It's because we have no need to fear the world of Forsaken Saints at all with our current strength." Like an arrow, time passed by in a flash. In the blink of an eye, the two worlds had already been negotiating for 10 years. The two sides still failed to reach an agreement after this decade. They both understood already that it would be very difficult for them to reach an agreement just by themselves. In the end,
the decision would still be made by the most powerful people of the respective worlds. As a result, the negotiations towards the end were just a symbolic push and pull to drag out time as they waited for the Spirit King and Jian Chen to emerge from seclusion. During the 10 years, the news that the humans, 100 races, sea race, and magical beasts had to give up a portion of their land had already spread far and wide. It had led to quite a large disturbance. Some people did not care too much about it at all, but there were also others who insisted on keeping their territory, refusing to leave even if they were to die. After having been split into 4 sections during the battle against the world of Forsaken Saints, the continent was divided into 4 regions: North, South, East, and West. An extremely wide river separated the regions. The rivers crossed the entire continent like a cross, directly flowing into the ocean. The location where the 4 rivers intersected was where the ruins of Mercenary City once lay. Water had now filled in the area. However, there was an extremely unusual region there as well. A strange energy protected the region, keeping the surrounding river out. This special region was the tunnel that connected the Tian Yuan continent to the world of Forsaken Saints. The tunnel was peaceful. After many years, the tunnel had stabilized long ago. Although powerful streams of energy would burst out from the tunnel from time to time, it was no longer like the time when it was first formed, where energy constantly gushed out wildly into outer space. At this moment, the stabilized tunnel pulsed slightly. The ripples rapidly expanded before leading to a huge reaction from the entire tunnel. The whole tunnel trembled violently and streams of extremely unstable energy wreaked havoc inside. Very soon, a figure gradually appeared in the streams of energy. The figure was very blurry at the start, but it gradually grew clearer as it came closer to the exit. The figure was a man who approached his 40s. His black hair was elegant, and he carried a dark metal sword on his back. His appearance was extremely ordinary, and he was simply dressed. He radiated with plainness. Even though he seemed extremely plain, he possessed an aura of dominance. He strode through the tunnel, and with his advance, the entire tunnel trembled. Streams of violent energy would be created constantly, rampaging through the tunnel. However, when the streams approached the man, they would disperse silently even though they were enough to heavily injure Saint Emperors. As a result, there were no streams of energy within a meter range of the man. The man did not purposefully cause the changes in the tunnel. He was just too powerful, so when he traveled through the tunnel, he seemed to be approaching the absolute limit that the tunnel could endure. This was why the tunnel had reacted in such a way. Even when he concealed his origin energy and presence, he could not avoid this. The man did not walk at a fast pace, but he would travel a great distance with each step. In just a short while, he emerged from the tunnel and appeared beneath the sky of the Tian Yuan continent. Suddenly, the wind and clouds began to churn. The thick layer of white clouds in the sky dispersed silently as if a terrifying pressure had forcefully crushed them. At the same time, a terrifying pressure permeated the surroundings, engulfing the world in a split second. It shocked everyone in the world, and all the beasts in the world collapsed onto the ground. The expressions of all the Origin Realm experts in the Golden Divine Hall on the Arctic tundra changed. Soon afterwards, they beamed with joy. The Spirit King. It's the Spirit King's presence. The Spirit King has emerged. Quick, let's go welcome the Spirit King. The Origin Realm experts of the world of Forsaken Saints collectively cried out in joy. They charged out of the Divine Hall as quickly as they could and hurried off towards the tunnel. All of them felt extremely indignant in the years they spent in this world. They had to negotiate with the Origin Realm experts from the Tian Yuan continent's world. These Origin Realm experts were clearly nothing in their eyes in terms of strength, weak enough to be crushed easily, yet they just had to hold themselves back even during the negotiation, resulting in no progress even after 10 years. This was all because the Tian Yuan continent had Shangguan Mu'er and Jian Chen, who was in outer space. Their Spirit King was not present either, which was why they were so hesitant during the negotiations. Now that the Spirit King had emerged from seclusion and come over, they all became filled with confidence. They were obviously overjoyed to have someone to rely on. At the same time, the Origin Realm experts from the 4 races snapped open their eyes simultaneously in Flame City. They looked towards the tunnel's location, and they all became extremely grim. Shangguan Mu'er's eyes narrowed as well. She looked in the direction of the Tian Yuan continent, and she became slightly stern as well. The Spirit King has finally come. Jian Chen, when are you going to emerge? Shangguan Mu'er looked at outer space. There was worry on her beautiful face.
The Spirit King was so powerful that he was far beyond what she could handle. The world only had Jian Chen who could handle him. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.